Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the first time I walked into apartment 2B at the Westfield Apartments. It was early March, the kind of damp cold that seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. The landlord, Mr. Henley, fumbled with his oversized key ring, his breath forming small clouds in the unheated hallway. A faint smell of coffee lingered in the air, growing stronger as he pushed open the door. "Been meaning to clear this place out for weeks now," he muttered, flicking on the light switch. "Rent's paid through the end of the month, though. Always paid early, that one." The apartment appeared frozen in time. A ceramic mug sat on the counter beside a coffee maker, half filled with a dark liquid now coated with a thin film of mold. Two muddy shoes rested neatly by the door, as if their owner had just stepped out and would return any moment. But according to Mr. Henley, no one had seen James Keller in over 3 weeks. "Mind if I look around?" I asked, though I had no official capacity here. I was merely a journalist for the local paper, following up on a tip from my neighbor who worked as a dispatcher for the police department. Man disappears without a trace, leaves everything behind. It wasn't much of a headline yet, but my instincts told me there was more to the story. The living room was sparsely furnished, a small couch facing a modest television, a coffee table supporting a stack of library books about architecture and urban planning. Nothing unusual, except perhaps how meticulously everything was arranged. No dust had settled on the surfaces, as if the room had been recently cleaned. In the bedroom, the bed was made with hospital corners, not a wrinkle in sight. The closet contained precisely 10 shirts, 5 pairs of pants, and 3 jackets, all hanging at identical distances from one another. A small dresser held neatly folded undergarments and socks. On the nightstand sat a leather-bound journal and a framed photograph of a woman with kind eyes. I leafed through the journal, feeling only slightly guilty for invading this missing man's privacy. Most entries were mundane, weather observations, notes about books he'd read, occasional mentions of neighbors' comings and goings. But the final entry, dated February 12th, gave me pause. "She's back again, 3rd floor, same apartment, different name, but I would recognize her anywhere. It's been 17 years, but some faces you never forget." I studied the photograph on the nightstand more carefully. The woman appeared to be in her 30s, with long auburn hair and a gentle smile. The frame was expensive, silver, intricately designed. I turned it over and found an inscription, Elizabeth, 1990. "Did Mr. Keller ever mention family?" I asked, showing Mr. Henley the photograph. "Nah, kept to himself mostly. Moved in about 6 months ago. Said he chose this building because it reminded him of somewhere he used to live." Mr. Henley scratched his stubbled chin. "Though come to think of it, when Mrs. Abernathy moved in upstairs last month, he did ask some odd questions about her." "What kind of questions?" "Wanted to know if she'd ever lived in the building before, if she had any family, stuff like that." I slipped the journal into my bag when Mr. Henley wasn't looking. Professional ethics aside, something about this disappearance felt unsettling. The coffee maker was still plugged in. The shoes by the door suggested someone who intended to return. That evening I visited Mrs. Abernathy on the 3rd floor. She answered on the second knock, a tall woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and alert eyes. Nothing like the woman in the photograph. "I'm writing an article about the neighborhood," I lied, showing her my press credentials. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" She invited me in politely enough, though her apartment felt temporary, unlived in. No photographs, minimal furniture, nothing personal on display. "Have you met many of your neighbors?" I asked casually. "Not really, I keep to myself." Her voice was soft but carried a certain firmness. "I travel often for work." "What about the tenant in 2B, James Keller?" Something flickered across her face, so brief I almost missed it. Recognition, fear. "I don't believe I've had the pleasure," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Later that night, I read through James Keller's journal more thoroughly. The earliest entries dated back only 6 months, coinciding with his move into the apartment. He mentioned the building frequently, describing its features with unusual precision, the way the third step on the stairwell creaked, the pattern of water stains on the ceiling of the second-floor hallway, the exact pitch of the radiator's hum during cold nights. About 2 months in, his entries began mentioning a search. He wrote about checking public records, obituaries, old newspaper articles. The entries grew increasingly focused on the building's history. 4 residents died here in the last 30 years, he wrote. None suspicious, according to reports, but reports can be wrong. Then came the first mention of Elizabeth. Dreamed about her again last night, always the same. She's walking up the stairs to the 3rd floor, looking back at me with that smile. Then she's gone. The entries became more frequent, more urgent, once Mrs. Abernathy moved in. It can't be a coincidence. Same building, same floor, I need to be certain. The final week of entries mentioned watching and evidence. The very last entry, the one I'd seen earlier, was followed by a single sentence I hadn't noticed before. "Tonight, I'll know for sure." After that, nothing. I called the police the next morning, but they weren't particularly concerned. Adults disappear by choice all the time, they said. No signs of foul play. The rent was paid. Without family to file a missing persons report, there wasn't much they could do. So I did what any journalist would do. I dug deeper. The building's history revealed nothing unusual. Built in the 1960s, it had changed owners several times, but maintained a steady stream of short-term tenants. County records showed no one named Elizabeth had ever officially resided there. 1 week into my investigation, I received a plain envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no postmark. Inside was a single photograph, faded, worn at the edges, showing a young James Keller standing beside the woman from the nightstand photo. They were in front of the Westfield apartments, arms around each other, smiling. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, "They never find the bodies." That night I noticed Mrs. Abernathy carrying a heavy suitcase down to the building's basement at 2 a.m. I followed at a distance, watching as she used a key to unlock a maintenance door I hadn't noticed before. She disappeared inside for nearly an hour. When she emerged, the suitcase was gone and she wore fresh clothes. The next day I picked the lock on her apartment while she was out. I told myself it was investigative journalism, but deep down I knew I had crossed a line. Her apartment was just as sparse as before, except for one new addition, James Keller's coffee mug, the distinctive chip on its handle unmistakable, sitting washed and dried by her kitchen sink. In her bedroom closet, I found a small box containing driver's licenses with different names, but all featuring her photo. One caught my eye immediately, Elizabeth Keller, issued 1989. That night I waited until the building fell quiet before making my way to the basement. The maintenance door was locked, but I had come prepared. Inside was a narrow corridor leading to a room filled with old building supplies and discarded furniture. Nothing unusual until I noticed the fresh cement patch in one corner of the floor. As I approached it, the maintenance door swung shut behind me. The lock clicked. "You're persistent," came Mrs. Abernathy's voice, or Elizabeth's, from the shadows. "James was too. Must be why you both chose journalism." I turned slowly, heart pounding. She stood by the door, perfectly calm, holding something that gleamed dully in the dim light. "He recognized you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "After all these years, impressive, really," she sighed. "Some people can't let go of the past, can't accept that sometimes people just need to disappear, start fresh." "What happened to Elizabeth Keller?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand. "She died in this building in 1990, tragic accident." Her smile was eerily similar to the one in the photograph. James never believed it, spent years looking for evidence. When he finally found me, she shrugged. "Well, some reunions aren't meant to be." And now my mouth was dry. "Now we have another unfortunate accident." She stepped forward. "Don't worry, your story will be perfect. Journalist disappears while investigating missing person case. Very poetic." As she moved closer, I noticed something she hadn't, the blinking red light of my phone, recording everything. And the text message I'd sent to my editor earlier: "If I don't check in by morning, look for me at Westfield Apartments, and check the basement." Sometimes the stories we chase are hunting us too, and sometimes, like James Keller, we find exactly what we're looking for, even if it's the last thing we ever find. Story 2. The first time I noticed it was on a Tuesday morning in late October. The kind of autumn day where the sun struggles against a gray sky, casting everything in a tired light. I was sitting in Mrs. Alina Whitman's living room, a cup of cooling tea between my palms, listening to her speak in that soft, bewildered voice. The fireplace hadn't been lit in days, I could tell from the settled ash, but my attention kept drifting to the large family portrait mounted above it. 5 faces smiled back at me. Only Mrs. Whitman had mentioned 4. "Detective Reed, I know how this sounds," she said, her fingers trembling around her own teacup. "But I've lived alone since Frank passed 3 years ago. The children visit for holidays, but they're all in the photo, all 4 of them." She paused, her eyes not meeting mine but fixed on the portrait. There shouldn't be a 5th person. The portrait showed what appeared to be a typical family gathering. Mrs. Whitman, grayer and thinner than the woman sitting across from me, her late husband Frank with his characteristic square jaw, and their 4 adult children arranged behind them. Standard composition, likely taken at their 40th anniversary celebration, according to the date discreetly embossed in the corner, July 15, 2022. And then there was the 5th figure, standing partially obscured behind the tallest son. A face I couldn't quite focus on, as if the camera had caught someone in motion. "When did you first notice this discrepancy?" I asked, using my most neutral tone. In 15 years with the department, I'd developed a practiced calm for these consultations, especially with elderly residents who were often simply confused or lonely. "3 weeks ago," Mrs. Whitman replied, her voice steadying. "I dust that frame every Sunday. I know every inch of that photograph. And then suddenly there was someone else, at first just a shadow at the edge, but every morning since." She trailed off, her hand gesturing weakly toward the portrait. I stood up and approached the photograph, removing it carefully from the wall. In the corner was the logo of a local photography studio I recognized, Hartman's, a family business that had served our small town for decades. "Mrs. Whitman, would you happen to have the original digital file or negative of this image?" She shook her head. "Only what Hartman's gave us, a USB drive. I haven't touched it since Frank uploaded it to his computer. I made a note to contact the studio. This was likely a simple case of confused memories, perhaps early dementia. Mrs. Whitman was 78, according to the case file that had been passed to me with little expectation of real investigation. Wellness check, possible confusion, the notes had read. Would you mind if I take this with me, just to examine it more closely? I'll return it tomorrow. Please do, she said, then added in a whisper, I've been sleeping in the guest room. I can't bear to see it change again. Back at the station, I placed the portrait under the office scanner, creating a high-resolution digital copy. Nothing immediately unusual appeared, except perhaps some minor discoloration in the back corner, common in printed photographs displayed in direct sunlight. I called Hartman's Photography and arranged to stop by. That evening I sat at my kitchen table, case files spread before me, the portrait leaning against my laptop. Mrs. Whitman's file was thin, no prior complaints, no history of mental health issues, widowed but financially stable, regular visits from her children confirmed by neighbors, a respected former librarian with deep community ties. The soft glow of my desk lamp cast subtle shadows across the photo's glossy surface as I sipped my coffee. Something about the composition kept drawing my eye. The way the family clustered together, how Mrs. Whitman's hand rested on her husband's shoulder. The fifth figure was barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, just a partial face behind the tallest son, features indistinct as if captured mid-movement. I must have dozed off reviewing the file. When I woke, my coffee was cold and the clock read 2:17 a.m. As I gathered the papers to head to bed, my gaze drifted to the portrait. The chill that ran through me had nothing to do with the autumn night seeping through my apartment windows. The figure had moved, not dramatically, but unmistakably. It now stood more clearly visible, still behind the family, but its face was turned directly toward the camera, toward me. I grabbed the photograph, examining it under my phone's flashlight. There was no sign of tampering, no evidence of a double exposure or Photoshop manipulation. The paper stock was consistent, the studio's watermark unaltered. Sleep evaded me that night. By morning, I convinced myself I had imagined it, a trick of memory, a visual illusion born of fatigue and suggestion. At Hartman's Photography, David Hartman himself greeted me. Now in his early 60s, he had photographed nearly every significant event in our town for decades. Eleanor Whitman's anniversary portrait, he nodded when I showed him the photograph. Beautiful family, terrible about Frank passing so soon after. Do you remember anything unusual about this session? I asked, watching his reaction carefully. He adjusted his glasses, studying the image. No, standard family portrait, 4-light setup, neutral backdrop, the usual challenges of getting everyone to smile at once. He looked up. Why do you ask? I pointed to the figure in the background. According to Mrs. Whitman, this person wasn't there during the photo session. David frowned, leaning closer. That's odd. Looks like it could be a double exposure, but we shoot digital now. He tapped his chin. Let me pull up the original files. In his back office, surrounded by framed award-winning photographs, David scrolled through his archived sessions. Here we are, Whitman Anniversary, July 15, 2022. He opened the raw image files, clicking through nearly identical shots of the smiling family. In each one, only the 4 children stood behind the couple. No fifth figure, no shadow, no stranger. This is the exact shot we used for the final print. David said, pointing to one image. I remember because Frank specifically liked this one, all the grandkids looking at the camera for once. I removed the physical photograph from my folder, placing it beside the computer screen. The composition was identical, except for the addition of the fifth figure. Could someone have altered the print after delivery? I asked. David shook his head, not without leaving evidence. We use archival inks and specialized paper. Any tampering would show distortion in the paper fibers or color inconsistencies. He rubbed his eyes beneath his glasses. I've been doing this for 30 years, detective. I can't explain this. That afternoon, I returned to Mrs. Whitman's house with both the original photograph and a freshly printed copy from David's original digital file, identical in every way except for the absence of the fifth figure. Mrs. Whitman was waiting in the same chair, teacup untouched before her. Her eyes widened when I entered. "You see it too, don't you?" she whispered. "It's changed again." I placed both images on the coffee table. In the original portrait, the figure had indeed moved. It now stood between two of the adult children, partially visible, like someone who had stepped into the frame at the last second. Its features remained frustratingly blurred. "Mrs. Whitman, do you recognize this person at all?" I asked gently. She shook her head, tears welling. I thought I was losing my mind. The doctors suggested medication, but her trembling finger pointed to the fresh print I had brought. "This is how it should look. This is my family." "Can you tell me if anything unusual has happened recently, beyond the photograph?" She hesitated. "I've been finding things moved, not dramatic changes. A book that was on the nightstand appears on the shelf. The kettle full when I know I emptied it, and sounds like someone walking upstairs when I'm down here alone." I made a note to request a patrol car drive by her house that night. "There's something else," she added, voice dropping. "Last night I heard Frank's voice, clear as day, calling my name from our bedroom." A chill raised the hair on my arms. Frank Whitman had been dead for 3 years. "Mrs. Whitman, would you mind if I looked around your house? Just a standard security check." She nodded, grateful. I started with the usual entry points, doors, windows, basement access, finding nothing suspicious. The security system was modern and functional. In the master bedroom, family photographs lined the dresser. Frank Whitman's reading glasses still sat on the nightstand as if waiting for his return. The last room I checked was the attic. The pull-down stairs creaked as I climbed, flashlight in hand. Dust motes danced in the beam of light as I swept it across stacked boxes and old furniture. Nothing seemed disturbed until my light caught the corner of a small table pushed against the far wall. On it sat an old Polaroid camera, a model from the 1970s. Beside it, a single developed photograph lay face down. I approached slowly, gloves already on from my inspection of the house. With careful fingers, I turned the photograph over. It was a Polaroid of the Whitman family portrait, the exact one hanging downstairs, but taken as if someone had photographed it while standing in this attic. The angle was slightly off, looking down at the portrait from above, and in the reflection of the portrait's glass, barely visible but unmistakable, was a figure standing where no one should be. The timestamp at the bottom of the Polaroid read, yesterday's date. My heart hammered against my ribs as I bagged the Polaroid as evidence. The camera, when I examined it, contained no film and was coated in dust except for the shutter button, which appeared recently wiped clean. As I descended from the attic, the house had grown darker, afternoon fading to evening. Mrs. Whitman waited at the bottom of the stairs. "Did you find anything, detective?" I considered how much to tell her. Just checking all the spaces, everything seems secure. A white lie to prevent further distress. I'd like to arrange for an officer to stay tonight just as a precaution. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. I was afraid no one would believe me. That night I couldn't sleep. The bagged Polaroid sat on my desk, its implications troubling. I called Officer Jimenez, who was stationed outside the Whitman residence, for an update. "All quiet, detective. No movement, no disturbances." I thanked him and tried again to rest, but my mind kept returning to the portrait, to the figure that seemed to be emerging more clearly with each passing day. The next morning I received a call from Mrs. Whitman's daughter, Catherine. She had arrived for a surprise visit and found her mother in a state of extreme distress. "She keeps talking about someone in a photograph," Catherine explained, concern evident in her voice, "and about hearing Dad. I'm worried she's having some kind of breakdown." I drove immediately to the Whitman house. Catherine met me at the door, her resemblance to her mother striking despite the 30-year age difference. "She's in the living room," Catherine whispered. "She won't stop staring at that family portrait." Mrs. Whitman sat in her usual chair, eyes fixed on the photograph which had been returned to its place above the fireplace. When I entered, she didn't turn. "It's Frank," she said quietly. "Look closely." I approached the portrait, dreading what I might see. The fifth figure had moved again, now standing directly behind Mrs. Whitman's chair in the photograph. Its features, though still blurred, had become recognizable enough. The square jaw, the familiar posture, it was Frank Whitman. But not as he appeared in the original portrait. This was Frank as he would have looked after his illness had taken hold. Thinner, frailer, the Frank who had died 3 years after the photograph was taken. Catherine gasped beside me. "That's not possible. Dad wasn't standing there. He was sitting next to Mom." I removed the portrait from the wall once more. "Mrs. Whitman, when exactly did your husband pass away?" "October 27th, 3 years ago," she replied, her gaze still distant. "Today is the anniversary." I looked again at the portrait, at the date embossed in the corner. July 15, 2022. Frank had died just 3 months after this photograph was taken. "He's trying to tell me something," Mrs. Whitman continued. "Each night he moves closer." I spent the rest of the day investigating Frank Whitman's death. According to medical records, he had died of heart failure following a short illness, nothing suspicious noted. The family home had passed directly to a liener. No large insurance policies, no contested inheritance. By all accounts, a loving marriage of 43 years ended by natural causes. Yet something nagged at me. I returned to the Polaroid found in the attic. Under magnification at the station lab, technicians confirmed it had been recently developed, despite the camera's apparent disuse. The fingerprints on it belonged only to me, from handling it with gloves. That evening, with Mrs. Whitman's permission and Catherine present, I set up a simple experiment. We positioned a digital camera on a tripod, aimed at the portrait above the fireplace. It would take 1 photo every hour through the night. "Mom should stay with me tonight," Catherine suggested. I agreed. After they left, I remained in the silent house, reviewing case notes while occasionally glancing at the portrait. Frank's figure hadn't moved since morning. He stood behind his wife's chair, one hand extended as if reaching for her shoulder but not quite touching it. The first 6 hourly photographs showed no change. At 2:17 a.m., the exact time I had noticed the first change in my apartment, the camera captured something different. The figure of Frank had moved again. Now his spectral hand rested on Alina's shoulder, just as it had in the original composition, but his other hand was raised, pointing at the fireplace below, specifically at a particular brick in the fireplace surround. I approached slowly, examining the area indicated. The brick appeared identical to those surrounding it, but when I pressed against it experimentally, I felt a slight give. Using my pocket knife, I carefully pried at the edges until the brick loosened. Behind it was a small cavity containing a sealed plastic bag. Inside, a handwritten letter and a small orange prescription bottle. The letter was in Frank's handwriting, according to the sample I'd seen in his personal effects. It was dated October 25, 3 years ago, 2 days before his death. "My dearest Ellie," it began, "by the time you find this, I'll be gone. I need you to know the truth. My heart condition was manageable. What's killing me is in the attached bottle. I've been feeling strange for months, dizzy spells, confusion. When I had my blood tested privately, they found elevated levels of digitalis. Someone has been poisoning me slowly, Ellie. At first I thought it might be accidental, a medication mix-up, but it's been too consistent, too careful. I've watched you prepare my tea every night with the same loving care you've shown for 43 years. I don't want to believe it. There must be another explanation. I'm leaving this here in case my suspicions prove correct. If they don't, I'll remove it and spare you this pain. I've loved you always, even now, Frank." The prescription bottle contained several partially dissolved tablets. The label had been removed, but lab analysis would later confirm they contained high concentrations of digitalis, a heart medication that in sustained elevated doses could induce heart failure. I looked up at the portrait, at Frank's spectral hand now clearly pointing to where his final message had been hidden. In that moment, the house seemed to exhale around me, as if releasing a long-held breath. The next morning's photograph showed only the original family portrait, Frank seated beside Alina, their 4 children standing behind them. The 5th figure had vanished. The case file would later officially attribute the photographic anomaly to technical artifact and equipment malfunction. Mrs. Whitman was placed under investigation, and eventually, evidence emerged of a long-planned insurance fraud involving Frank's carefully structured retirement accounts. But I know what I saw. In the quiet moments of my career since then, I've wondered about the ways the dead might reach back to settle unfinished business, about photographs that change when no one is watching, about justice that comes from beyond the frame. I've never mentioned that in the final photograph from that night, Frank's expression had changed too. The stiff smile was gone, replaced with something that looked almost like peace. Story 3. I remember the peculiar quality of light that afternoon, how it slanted through the blinds and settled like dust on the case files spread across my desk. 20 years with the department, and still, some cases find a way to nest inside you, to whisper when you're trying to sleep. This was one of those cases. The Richardson building stood on Maple Avenue for nearly a century before Emily Chen signed her lease. 7 stories of faded brick and ornate cornices, the kind of place that carries stories in its walls. I first walked those halls on October 17th, summoned by a call that came in at 3:42 a.m., a woman's voice trembling but composed. The dispatch recording would later become evidence item 27B. "There's a room in my apartment," she had said, "a room that shouldn't be here." I remember the weight of my footsteps in that silent hallway, the slight give of the aged floorboards beneath the carpet. Apartment 5C was at the end, a corner unit with eastern exposure. The door was unlocked when I arrived. Inside, Emily Chen sat perfectly still at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. She didn't look up when I entered. "Ms. Chen," I kept my voice soft, matching the hushed atmosphere of the apartment. "I'm Detective Morrow." She nodded slightly, still staring into her tea. "It's still there. I checked again before calling you." The apartment was meticulously organized, minimalist furniture, everything in its place. Emily had moved in just 3 weeks prior, drawn by the generous square footage and the surprisingly affordable rent. That should have been our first clue. In real estate, especially in this neighborhood, discounts always came with hidden costs. "Can you show me what you found?" I asked, keeping my notepad ready. The gentle scratch of pen against paper was the only sound as we moved deeper into the apartment. The hallway stretched longer than the building's exterior would suggest, something I noted but didn't fully process at the time. At its end stood a door, simple, unadorned, white paint slightly yellowed with age. "This door," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It wasn't here yesterday, or any day before that." I studied her face, no signs of intoxication, no indication of delusion, just fear, crystalline and rational, the kind that comes from having your understanding of reality shifted without warning. "And you're certain about that?" "I've lived here for 23 days, she replied. "I've cleaned this hallway, I've hung pictures on these walls." She gestured to the frames arranged in a neat line. "There was never a door here." The handle turned smoothly under my touch, no resistance, no squeak of hinges, as if the door had been recently oiled. The room beyond was approximately 12 feet by 14 feet, hardwood floors, a single window with heavy curtains drawn, and furnished, completely furnished with items I would later confirm belonged to Emily Chen. A reading chair she had ordered online but hadn't yet received. A vintage lamp her mother had promised to send from Portland. A framed photograph taken during a trip to Barcelona 2 summers ago. The original was still packed in a box in her storage unit downtown. But the most disturbing element wasn't what was in the room, it was the condition, not a speck of dust. Not a single indication that this space had been sealed off or unused. Everything was arranged with careful precision, as if waiting for someone to simply walk in and occupy it. "Have you entered this room?" I asked, though I already knew the answer from the paleness of her face. "Just once," Emily whispered, "just long enough to see my things that shouldn't be here, couldn't be here." The building's original blueprints, which I retrieved the following morning from city records, showed no room at that location. According to the architectural plans, that space simply didn't exist, just an external wall and the 60-foot drop to the alley below. Yet there it was, solid and tangible, a perfect square of impossible space. The property manager, Arthur Whitmore, had overseen the building for 37 years. His office in the basement was a cluttered testament to the building's history, maintenance logs, tenant records, repair invoices, all meticulously catalogued in metal filing cabinets that lined the walls. "The Richardson has its quirks," he told me, adjusting his wire-framed glasses as he pulled a heavy ledger from a shelf. "Settling foundation, temperamental plumbing, but extra rooms appearing out of nowhere, that would be a first." He ran a finger down a page of handwritten notes. Apartment 5C was last renovated in 1997. Standard layout, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, galley kitchen. No structural changes since then. I showed him the photographs I'd taken of the room. His reaction was subtle, just a slight tightening around the eyes, a barely perceptible hesitation before he spoke. "That's not possible," he said, but there was something in his tone, something that suggested he wasn't entirely surprised. It took 3 days of persistent questioning before Whitmore finally shared what he knew. The building had been designed by Elias Ward, an architect with an interest in what he called transitional spaces. Rooms that existed, according to Ward's personal journals, between the world as we perceive it and the world as it truly is. There have been incidents, Whitmore admitted eventually. Over the years, tenants reporting changes in the layout, spaces that seemed to shift. We've always attributed it to the building settling or to confusion on the part of the residents. But Emily Chen wasn't confused. The room existed, filled with her possessions that couldn't possibly be there. The lab found no fingerprints other than Emily's on any of the items, no signs of forced entry, no explanation for how someone could have obtained her belongings, many of which weren't even in her possession yet. We had the room sealed off, police tape across the doorway, an officer stationed in the hallway. By morning, both the tape and the door were gone. The hallway ended in a solid wall, as if the door had never existed. The officer reported nothing unusual during his shift. 3 days later, the door reappeared, this time in the living room behind the sofa. Again, the room beyond contained Emily's belongings, arranged slightly differently. A book opened to page 117, a page marked in Emily's actual copy with a coffee stain. A pair of earrings her sister had only just mailed, the package still sitting unopened in the building's lobby. Previous tenants of apartment 5C, we discovered, had rarely stayed longer than 6 months. Most broke their leases, citing personal reasons. One, a graduate student named Michael Kowalski, had apparently left in such a hurry that he abandoned most of his possessions. We tracked him to a small town in Oregon where he refused to discuss his time in the Richardson building. All he would say was, "That place knows things it shouldn't." Emily Chen moved out after the second appearance of the room. The apartment remained vacant for several months before a new tenant signed a lease, a young professional named Thomas Mercer who had recently relocated to the city. I made a point of checking in on him periodically. For 6 months, nothing unusual occurred. Then on a rainy Tuesday in April, he called the station and asked specifically for me. "There's a closet in my bedroom," he said without preamble. "It wasn't there yesterday." I've been back to the Richardson building 17 times since that first call. The room has appeared in different locations for different tenants, always containing items personal to them, always immaculately maintained, always impossible. The building's current owner, a development company based overseas, has no interest in investigating the phenomenon. The property is profitable, the occasional broken lease a minor inconvenience compared to the potential publicity of acknowledging what's happening. Some nights I drive past the Richardson and look up at the windows of apartment C. Sometimes I see the current tenant moving about their home, unaware of what waits for them. Sometimes I see a light in a window that, according to the blueprints, cannot exist. The case remains open. Not officially, there is no crime, no perpetrator to arrest, no charges to file. But in my personal records in the locked drawer of my desk, the file continues to grow. Witness statements, photographs, architectural plans, and the question that keeps me awake at night: what happens when the room decides someone belongs in it permanently? Emily Chen lives in another state now. She doesn't have a landline and her cell number is unlisted, but occasionally she sends me updates, brief emails just to confirm she's still there, still herself. Her latest message arrived yesterday, just 3 words: still no doors. I take some comfort in that, but I still find myself checking the walls of my own home, running my hands along the surface, making sure they remain solid, making sure no new doors have appeared while I wasn't looking. Because the most troubling aspect of the case isn't the room itself, it's what the room represents. The possibility that our world isn't fixed, that spaces can appear and disappear, that somewhere there might be a blueprint showing a door in my home that I've never noticed. A door that's simply waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Story 4. I still remember the first time I heard the footsteps. It was late November when the air turns sharp enough to make the old buildings creak and settle. The sound was faint at first, so faint that I dismissed it as the natural complaints of aged wood and pipes. A gentle rhythm beneath the floorboards, like someone pacing slowly, methodically, in a room that shouldn't exist. My apartment was on the ground floor of the Willow Creek residence, a converted textile factory from the 1920s. When I signed the lease, Ms. Harmon, the building manager, had given me the usual tour, pointing out the original exposed brick, the updated wiring, the history preserved in every corner beam. "It's all original foundation," she'd said, tapping her sensible shoe against the hardwood floor. "No basement. They built it right on the concrete slab." No basement. Those words would return to me on those quiet nights when I lay awake, listening to what couldn't possibly be there. I'd been living there 3 months when the sounds became impossible to ignore. They always started around 2 a.m., when the world outside fell into that perfect stillness that amplifies even the slightest disturbance. First would come the footsteps, measured, unhurried, then occasional scraping like furniture being adjusted. Sometimes I thought I heard humming, though that might have been the building's ancient heating system straining against the cold. Sleep became elusive. Dark circles formed under my eyes, and colleagues at the newspaper where I worked as a fact-checker began asking if I was feeling well. I told them it was insomnia. I didn't mention the impossible footsteps beneath a floor that should have had nowhere to go. One evening, I finally worked up the courage to ask Ms. Harmon about it. We stood in the hallway, the overhead lights casting long shadows down the corridor. "I was wondering," I said, keeping my voice casual, "about the building's layout. Are you certain there's no basement or sublevel?" She adjusted her glasses, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Of course I'm certain. I've managed this building for 22 years. Her voice was firm, but something flickered across her face, brief enough that I might have imagined it. "Is there a problem with your unit?" "No," I said quickly, "just curious about the architecture." That night the footsteps seemed louder, more deliberate, as if whoever or whatever was making them knew I had been asking questions. I'm a journalist by training, even if my current role involves more checking other people's facts than investigating my own stories. The next day I visited the county records office. The building permit for Willow Creek residents dated back to 1923. The original blueprints showed a simple foundation, no basement, just as Ms. Harmon had said. But a revision filed in 1925 caught my attention, an amendment requesting permission for a storage sublevel with private access. The revision was approved, but in subsequent decades, there was no mention of this sublevel in any renovation permits. It was as if the basement had been officially forgotten. That night I waited until well past midnight. The building grew quiet, settling into its nighttime rhythm. I moved my kitchen rug aside and got down on my hands and knees, running my fingers along the floorboards. The wood felt different in one square section, newer perhaps, or at least different from the surrounding boards. I worked my fingernails into what seemed to be a nearly invisible seam. After several minutes of struggling, I felt something give. A small, recessed handle revealed itself, attached to what was unmistakably a trapdoor. My heart pounded in my chest as I pulled. The hinges protested with a long, pained groan that seemed impossibly loud in the night's silence. Below, a set of narrow wooden stairs descended into darkness. The air that rose from the opening was cool and stale, carrying the scent of damp stone and something else, something I couldn't identify. I reached for my phone and turned on its flashlight. The beam caught dust particles dancing in the disturbed air, but couldn't penetrate far into the darkness below. Common sense told me to close the trapdoor, call the police, and wait, but the footsteps had been haunting me for months. I needed to know. I descended slowly, each stair creaking beneath my weight. The temperature dropped with every step. At the bottom, my flashlight revealed a corridor extending beneath the building, roughly finished with concrete walls. A single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, unlit. I pulled its chain, and yellow light washed over the space. What I saw wasn't what I expected. Not some forgotten storage area or maintenance access, but a living space. A neatly made bed stood against one wall, a small table with a single chair, shelves containing books and personal items, a hot plate, a bucket with a lid, everything meticulously organized as if the occupant had a system for living in this confined space. I approached the bed, and that's when I saw it, carved into the wooden headboard, my name. Elizabeth, not scratched hastily, but carefully engraved, the letters smooth and polished, as if someone had traced them repeatedly with their fingers. Below my name was a series of dates. The first was 3 months ago, the day I moved in. The last was tomorrow. My blood turned to ice. I swept the flashlight around the room again, noticing things I'd missed. Newspaper clippings on the wall, all articles I had fact-checked. A board with photographs, me entering the building, me at the coffee shop across the street, me sleeping through my bedroom window. A journal lay open on the table. I approached it slowly, as if it might bite. The handwriting was neat, almost beautiful. Day 91, her footsteps are heavier today. She's tired, not sleeping well. Soon she'll find me. Soon she'll understand why I've been waiting, why it had to be her, why this place called to both of us. The last entry was dated today. She's coming tonight, I can feel it. Everything is ready. I backed away from the table, my heel hitting something solid. I turned to find a large trunk against the wall that I hadn't noticed before. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid. Inside were women's clothes, styles from different decades. A wallet with a driver's license from 1987, another from 2003. Photos of different women, all standing in what I recognized as my apartment, and beneath it all newspaper clippings. Missing persons reports, 5 women spanning decades. All previous tenants of my apartment. A sound from above made me freeze, the apartment door opening, footsteps crossing the kitchen floor. But I was already in the basement. The footsteps I'd been hearing weren't coming from below. They were coming from above, from someone entering my apartment when I wasn't home. Someone who had been watching me, someone who knew I would eventually find the basement, someone who was now blocking my only exit. The light went out, plunging me into darkness. My phone's flashlight seemed suddenly inadequate, casting wild shadows as my hand shook. From above, I heard the trapdoor close with a decisive thud, then the sound of something heavy being dragged across it. In the darkness, my flashlight caught something I hadn't seen before. Another door set into the far wall of the basement. It was partially open, revealing a tunnel. The tap of footsteps began descending the stairs from my apartment, steady, unhurried, familiar because I'd been hearing them for months, not from below, but from recordings played to lure me exactly where I now stood. I had a choice, face whoever was coming down those stairs, or take my chances with the unknown tunnel. As the basement's original entrance creaked open, I slipped through the other door, pulling it closed behind me. The tunnel was narrow and rough-hewn, smelling of earth and old stone. My flashlight revealed that it extended far beyond the building's footprint, likely connecting to the city's old service tunnels. I ran, the sound of pursuit fading behind me. Eventually, I emerged through a maintenance hatch near the river, half a mile from my apartment. I went straight to the police. They found the basement just as I had described it, but the tunnel door was sealed with concrete that had been in place for decades. The trunk was there, but empty. The journal gone, the carved headboard replaced with an ordinary one. Ms. Harmon had no explanation for the basement. The current owner claimed no knowledge of any sublevel and suggested it must have been sealed off and forgotten decades ago. The police found no evidence of the missing women I'd seen in the photos. But they did find something else. In the city archives, a photograph from 1925 showing the building's original owner and architect. Standing beside him was a man identified as his assistant, a man wearing Ms. Harmon's distinctive oval glasses with the same thin smile she gave me when I asked about the basement. A man who would now be well over 120 years old. I never returned to that apartment, but sometimes in my dreams I still hear footsteps. Not below me, but behind me, steady and unhurried, following me through endless tunnels where the walls are carved with names, the last one always mine. And sometimes, when I pass old buildings with history in their bones, I wonder about the spaces in between floors, the rooms that shouldn't exist, and the people who might be living in them, listening to our footsteps, waiting for us to discover theirs. Story 5. I still remember the evening when Catherine Morgan first walked into my office. The autumn rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with the unsettling nature of what she was about to share. The overhead light cast soft shadows across her face as she carefully placed a worn leather photo album on my desk. Her fingers lingered on its cover, hesitant, as if opening it might somehow make the contents more real. "Detective Hayes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need you to look at something that's been keeping me awake for weeks now." I nodded, allowing her the time she needed. In my 15 years with the cold case unit, I'd learned that patience often revealed more than pressing for information. The radiator in the corner hummed quietly, sending waves of warmth through my dimly lit office as Catherine finally opened the album. "This is my 6th birthday party," she explained, pointing to a faded color photograph. 6 candles glowed on a homemade cake, illuminating the face of a smiling child Catherine herself, decades younger, her dark hair in pigtails tied with ribbon. My mother took these pictures. It was 1987. I leaned forward, studying the image. Nothing seemed immediately unusual, just a typical family celebration from the late 80s. Children gathered around a table, party hats askew, faces bright with anticipation for cake and ice cream. Look at the back, Catherine said, tapping a manicured nail against the edge of the photo, by the sliding glass door. That's when I saw him, standing slightly apart from the gathering, partially obscured by a curtain, was a man I wouldn't have noticed without her direction. Tall, unremarkable features, watching the children with what appeared to be casual interest, a stranger at the periphery of a family moment. "Did you know him?" I asked, reaching for my notebook, the leather cover smooth and familiar beneath my fingertips. Catherine shook her head slowly. "That's just it. I've never seen him before, or rather, I never realized I'd seen him before, until now." She turned the page of the album deliberately, revealing another photograph. This one showed Catherine at perhaps 8 years old, standing proudly beside a science fair project. And there, in the background, partially visible through a classroom doorway, the same man. My interest deepened as Catherine continued turning pages. The man appeared in photographs spanning decades of her life: middle school graduation, high school prom, college move-in day, her father's funeral, her wedding day. Always at the edges, always watching, always the same age, the same appearance. Sometimes it was just a partial profile, sometimes a blurred figure in the background, but once you knew to look for him, unmistakably the same person. "I was organizing old family photos last month," Catherine explained, her voice growing steadier as she shared her discovery. "Scanning them for a digital archive, I never noticed him until I saw all these images in sequence." The weight of her revelation settled in the room like dust. Outside, the rain intensified, creating a gentle white noise that seemed to insulate us from the world beyond my office. I studied each photograph carefully, noting details about the mysterious figure, his stance, the angle of his head, his consistent distance from the main subjects. "Have you ever been approached by this man? Any strange encounters you can recall?" I asked, my pen hovering above my notepad, ready to capture any detail that might prove significant. Catherine closed her eyes momentarily, considering. "Never directly, but now that I know he's been there, I remember feelings, times when I sensed someone watching me. I always dismissed it as imagination." I nodded, understanding. Our minds are designed to protect us, to rationalize away the inexplicable. But sometimes the truth lingers just beyond our conscious awareness, waiting to be discovered. "What concerns me most," Catherine continued, her fingers tracing the edge of a photograph from her college graduation, "is that these span almost 30 years, and he hasn't aged, not a day." She was right. In each image, despite the passage of time evident in Catherine herself from child to adult, the mystery man remained unchanged. Same posture, same expressionless observation, same dark coat. I carefully documented each appearance, creating a timeline that stretched from 1987 to 2018. 31 years of uninvited presence in someone's life, captured in frozen moments. The consistency was unnerving. "Have you shown these to anyone else?" I asked, the soft scratch of my pen against paper the only sound in the room for a moment. "Just my husband. He thinks I'm overreacting, that it's just coincidence, different men who look similar." Catherine's voice carried the slight edge of someone who had been dismissed, not believed. "But I know it's the same person. I feel it." I believed her. My years investigating cold cases had taught me to trust patterns, and this was undeniably a pattern. Something methodical, deliberate. This wasn't random. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in Catherine's photographs, enlarging them digitally, enhancing details, searching for anything that might identify this shadow that had followed her through life. I contacted photography experts, facial recognition specialists, even consulted with former colleagues from the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit. The man's features were always just obscured enough by distance, lighting, or angle to make definitive identification impossible, yet clear enough to confirm it was the same person. He seemed to know exactly where to position himself, visible enough to be present in the record, but not so obvious as to be noticed in the moment. As I delved deeper, patterns emerged. He appeared only in photographs taken at significant life events, never in casual, everyday moments, always at milestones, transitions, pivotal points in Catherine's journey from child to adult, birth and death, celebration and mourning, beginnings and endings. 3 months into my investigation, Catherine contacted me again. Her voice on the phone was different, quieter, more controlled. "Detective Hayes, I found something else. Can you come over?" The Morgan home sat on a quiet suburban street, mature trees casting dappled shadows across its brick facade. Catherine met me at the door, ushering me inside without the usual social pleasantries. She led me to her home office, where dozens of photographs were spread across a large desk. "These aren't mine," she explained, gesturing to the collection. "These are my mother's, from before I was born." I leaned closer, examining the black and white images from what appeared to be the 1960s. Young adults in outdated fashions, hair styled according to the trends of the era. Catherine's mother, recognizable from other photos, laughing with friends on a university campus. And there he was, the same man unchanged, watching from beneath a tree. The same stance, the same coat, the same distance. Only this time he wasn't watching Catherine, he was watching her mother. "There's more," Catherine said, her voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the air conditioning. She carefully placed another set of photographs before me. These were older, still yellowed with age, corners curled inward. These belonged to my grandmother. The images from the 1940s told the same story. The mystery man, identical in every way, observing Catherine's grandmother as a young woman. 3 generations of women in the same family, each shadowed by the same unchanging presence. "What does he want?" Catherine asked, fear and frustration mingling in her voice. "Why us? Why our family?" I had no answer for her. The conversation of the ceiling fan filled the silence between us as we both stared at the photographic evidence of something impossible, a man who had observed 3 generations without aging a day. Later that week, I obtained permission to access sealed records related to unexplained disappearances in the area dating back to the 1940s. Hours turned to days as I pored over faded reports and witness statements in the basement archives of the precinct, dust particles dancing in the beams of light from the single window high on the wall. Then I found it, a report from 1943 detailing the unexplained disappearance of Thomas Elliott, age 32. The physical description matched our mystery man. A single photograph accompanied the file. Elliott standing beside his wife on their wedding day, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The most unsettling detail came in the supplementary notes. Elliott's wife, Margaret, had been found deceased 3 months after his disappearance. The cause of death officially listed as heart failure, though the investigating officer had noted his suspicions of foul play. Margaret's maiden name was Wilson, Catherine's grandmother's family name. That connection sent me deeper into genealogical records and family histories. What emerged was a pattern spanning over 80 years, a lineage of women connected by blood, each observed by a man who should have long since aged and died. I never told Catherine about Thomas Elliott. Some truths offer no comfort, no resolution. Instead, I arranged for security measures, surveillance, protection. The photographs stopped appearing. The present seemed to recede, perhaps aware it had been noticed, identified, tracked. But sometimes, late at night, with rain tapping against my window and case files spread across my desk, I wonder about Thomas Eliot and what binds him to this family of women. What vow or vendetta or love twisted into obsession keeps him frozen in time, watching but never intervening. I wonder what he's waiting for. And I checked my own family photographs, searching the edges of the frame, the shadows in the background, wondering who might be watching me. Story 6. I remember the exact moment I first held it. The leather cover was worn at the edges, softened by years of handling, with a subtle patina that only genuine age can create. It was tucked between mismatched dishware and tarnished silverware at the corner thrift store on Maple Street, the kind of place where objects go to begin their second lives. The journal wasn't marked with a price tag. When I asked the elderly shopkeeper about it, she studied it with a curious expression before saying, $3 seems fair. Nobody's written in it yet. She ran her fingers over the brittle pages, confirming their emptiness with a slight nod. I paid and left, the journal nestled in my canvas bag alongside a few paperback mysteries and a vintage teacup with a hairline crack. The October air carried the first hints of winter as I walked the 6 blocks back to my apartment. Trees shed their amber leaves onto sidewalks, creating a quiet percussion underfoot. I placed the journal on my nightstand that evening. Under the warm glow of my bedside lamp, I opened it again, feeling the creak of its spine. The yellowed pages remained blank, waiting. I ran my fingertips over the paper, feeling its texture, slightly rough, with the subtle irregularities of handmade paper. Something about it felt inviting, as though it was eager for ink. But I didn't write in it that night. Instead, I fell asleep to the sound of gentle rain against my window pane, the journal forgotten beside me. The following morning I noticed it immediately. The previously blank first page now contained writing. My writing, the loops of my lowercase letters, the distinctive way I cross my T's. It was unmistakably my handwriting, but I hadn't written a single word. The entry was dated October 17, the next day. The man in apartment 4B will miss his medication today. By evening, his confusion will be noticeable to anyone who speaks with him. The building manager should check on him before midnight. I stared at the words, a chill spreading across my skin despite the warmth of my apartment. I'd never met the tenant in 4B. I wasn't even certain the apartment existed in my building. My hands trembled slightly as I turned the page, but the rest remained blank. That day at work, I couldn't focus. The journal consumed my thoughts. I considered throwing it away, burning it even, but curiosity kept me tethered to it. During my lunch break, I called my building's management office. I was wondering if there's a tenant in apartment 4B, I asked, trying to sound casual. Let me check our directory, the receptionist replied. I heard the clicking of computer keys. Yes, Mr. Garfield in 4B, he's been with us for about 15 years. Did you need to leave a message for him? I declined and ended the call, my heart beating a little faster. The journal's prediction now had a name attached to it. That evening, I found myself lingering in the lobby of my apartment building. I'd never paid much attention to my neighbors before, knowing only a handful by name. After 30 minutes of pretending to sort through my mail, an elderly man emerged from the elevator, his movements slow and deliberate. He approached the wall of mailboxes, mumbling to himself. I watched as he tried several keys before finding the right one. After retrieving his mail, he turned toward the elevator but stopped, looking confused. "Excuse me," I said, approaching him cautiously. "Are you Mr. Garfield?" His eyes, cloudy with cataracts, focused on me. "Yes, that's me. Have we met before?" "No, but I'm your neighbor. I live in 2A. Are you feeling all right? You seem a bit disoriented." He rubbed his forehead. "I'm having trouble remembering if I took my medication this morning. Usually I keep track, but today seems foggy." My skin prickled with goosebumps. "Would you like me to call someone? Maybe the building manager could help." No, he insisted. "I'll be fine, just need to get back upstairs." I watched him shuffle back to the elevator, his movements unsteady. As soon as he was gone, I contacted the building manager, explaining my concerns. The next morning, I found a new entry in the journal, again in my handwriting, again dated 1 day ahead. "The red scarf left behind at the coffee shop on 3rd Street belongs to a woman who won't return for it. Inside its lining is a key to a storage unit containing evidence from the Miller case, the one that went cold 3 years ago. Detective Rivera should be informed." I knew of the Miller case, everyone in town did. Catherine Miller had disappeared while walking home from her evening shift at the public library. Despite exhaustive searches and an investigation that spanned months, no trace of her was ever found. The case had eventually been filed away, unsolved. Detective Rivera had been the light investigator. I remembered her from the press conferences, her sharp eyes and unwavering determination as she appealed to the public for information. That day I found myself at the coffee shop on 3rd Street. I ordered a latte and scanned the lost and found box behind the counter. No red scarf. I asked the barista if anyone had turned one in recently. "Funny you should ask," she said. "Someone found one outside yesterday. It's really nice cashmere, I think." She reached under the counter and pulled out a deep crimson scarf. "Do you know who it belongs to?" I asked. "No idea. It's been here since yesterday afternoon. No one's claimed it." I left my contact information, saying I might know the owner, and departed without the scarf. That night I wrestled with indecision. The journal's accuracy so far was unsettling, but what was I supposed to do? Call the police based on writing that had mysteriously appeared in an old journal? After a restless night, I returned to the coffee shop. The scarf remained unclaimed. This time I asked if I could take it to return to its owner. The barista, different from yesterday, shrugged and handed it over. Alone in my apartment, I examined the scarf. The fabric was luxurious, the color rich and vibrant. I ran my fingers along the seams, feeling for anything unusual. Near one end, I noticed a small irregularity in the lining. With careful fingers, I discovered a slit in the fabric. Inside was a small key with a numbered tag, 447. My hands were trembling now. I sat down, the scarf pooled in my lap, the key clutched tightly in my palm. The journal had been right twice. What was I supposed to do with this information? The next entry appeared that night. "The storage unit is at Westside Storage on Elm Street. It was rented under the name Thomas Greenlee, but this identity is fabricated. The real renter is someone close to Catherine Miller, someone who was never considered a suspect." I knew I should take this to Detective Rivera, but how would I explain how I came by this information? I couldn't tell her about a journal that wrote itself. She'd think I was either crazy or somehow involved in the crime. Instead, I did some research. Thomas Greenlee didn't exist in any public records I could find. No social media presence, no property records, nothing. It was as if he'd been created solely to rent a storage unit. After much deliberation, I sent an anonymous letter to Detective Rivera, including the key and the information about Westside Storage. I dropped it in a mailbox across town, wearing gloves and leaving no trace of myself. 3 days later, the newspaper headline read, "Breakthrough in Miller Case, Evidence Found in Storage Unit LEADS to Arrest." The article mentioned that police had received an anonymous tip leading them to evidence linking Catherine's brother-in-law to her disappearance. He had been interviewed during the initial investigation, but was never considered a serious suspect. The journal remained silent for several days after that. When the next entry finally appeared, it was different. You wonder where these messages come from. They come from you, a version of you that exists outside of linear time. You found this journal in a thrift store because you will eventually leave it there, creating a loop that cannot be broken. Look for the woman with a butterfly tattoo on her wrist. She has answers about your past that you've been seeking. I closed the journal, a strange calm settling over me despite the impossibility of it all. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, but experienced. The journal continues to write itself, one day ahead, and I've learned to listen to its messages. Sometimes I wonder if I'm merely a character in someone else's story, a tale being told in a soft, hypnotic voice to someone drifting off to sleep. But then I feel the weight of the journal in my hands, the texture of its pages against my fingertips, and I know this is real. At least as real as anything can be when time folds back on itself and the future whispers secrets into the past. Story 7. The old mansion had burned to the ground years ago, leaving only ashes and charred wood. But when the construction crew arrived to clear the lot, the house was standing perfectly intact. The rooms furnished, the chandeliers glittering, and the sound of footsteps coming from the second floor. I remember the first time I saw the Hargrove mansion after the supposed fire. The morning air was thick with fog, creating a hazy veil around the Victorian structure that shouldn't have been there. My boots crunched on the gravel driveway as I approached, the sound seeming to dissipate into the unusual stillness surrounding the property. As a detective with 15 years on the force, I'd been called to investigate many unusual circumstances, but never something that defied physical reality itself. "Detective Reynolds," the foreman called out, his voice unnaturally quiet, as if the fog was absorbing his words. "We got here at 7 this morning. The demolition permit clearly states this address, 1887 Willow Creek Road." He handed me a clipboard, his fingers trembling slightly, but as you can see, there's nothing to demolish. I studied the paperwork, the official seal of the city clearly visible in the corner. According to every record, the Hargrove mansion had burned completely on October 12th of last year. The insurance claim had been processed. The debris was documented by the fire marshal. And yet before us stood a pristine 3-story Victorian home, its dark mahogany exterior gleaming as if freshly polished. "Has anyone gone inside?" I asked, my gaze drawn to a subtle movement behind a second-floor curtain. "Johnson and Patel went in about 20 minutes ago. They haven't come back out." The foreman stared at his boots. "We heard footsteps upstairs, but no one answered when we called." I nodded slowly, removing my notebook from my pocket. The pages felt unusually cold to the touch. "Tell me about the fire," I said, uncapping my pen. "What exactly happened that night?" The foreman, Davis, according to his name tag, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I wasn't here for that. but the story around town is that old man Hargrove went crazy after his wife died, started seeing things, talking about how the house was changing when he wasn't looking, moving things around, growing new rooms. I wrote this down, my pen leaving faint blue marks on the paper, as if reluctant to document these details. And the fire. They say he set it himself, poured gasoline in every room and lit a match. Firefighters couldn't save the structure, but they pulled Hargrove out. He's been in Pinewood Psychiatric ever since, babbling about how the house wouldn't let him leave. A cool breeze rustled through the surrounding oaks, carrying the faint scent of roses. Hargrove's wife had been known for her garden, though nothing remained of it now except wild, overgrown bushes at the property's edge. "Wait here," I instructed, moving toward the front steps. They creaked under my weight, the sound surprisingly organic, like an intake of breath. The front door was unlocked, swinging open with the lightest touch of my fingertips. Inside, the air was different, warmer, heavier, with a subtle scent I couldn't quite place. Not dust or mold, which would be expected in an abandoned home, but something sweeter, more intentional, like old perfume mixed with candle wax. The foyer opened to a grand staircase, its wooden banister polished to a high shine. To my right, a parlor with antique furniture arranged as if awaiting guests. To my left, a dining room with a table set for four, complete with fine china and crystal glasses. Everything was immaculate. Nothing suggested a house that had been reduced to ashes months ago. "Johnson, Patel," I called out, my voice sounding muffled in the dense air. No response came, but from somewhere upstairs, I heard the distinct sound of a door closing. I made my way through the first floor, documenting everything in my notebook. The kitchen was fully stocked with vintage appliances that hummed quietly, as if recently used. On the counter sat a teacup, still warm to the touch, the tea inside perfectly steeped. Next to it lay a newspaper dated October 12th, the day of the fire. As I examined the paper, a creak from above drew my attention. Deliberate footsteps crossed the ceiling overhead, moving from one end of the house to the other. The staircase seemed to stretch as I ascended, each step taking me further into the heart of the impossibility. Photographs lined the wall, the Hargrove family through generations. In each image, the house stood prominently in the background, unchanging across decades. The upper hallway stretched before me, lined with closed doors. "Johnson, Patel," I called again, pushing open the first door on my right. A bedroom meticulously arranged, the bed made with hospital corners. On the nightstand sat a leather journal. I picked it up, turning to the last entry. The handwriting was sharp, urgent. "The house is not what we thought. It's not a structure. It's a living thing. It consumes. It rebuilds. It remembers." Margaret understood this before she died. She tried to warn me, but I wouldn't listen. Now it's taken her completely. Sometimes I hear her voice in the walls. Last night I found a door that wasn't there before. Behind it was Margaret's garden, blooming impossible flowers. When I tried to touch them, my fingers passed through. The house is building something. A bridge between here and somewhere else. I can't stay. I can't leave. God help me. The journal was signed by Edmund Hargrove, dated October 11th, the day before the fire. A soft laugh from the hallway made me turn sharply. A woman's voice, almost a whisper. He always was a dramatic man. The hallway was empty when I stepped out, but the door at the end now stood ajar, spilling warm light into the corridor. As I approached, the scent of roses grew stronger, almost overwhelming. This room was different, a solarium filled with blooming flowers that shouldn't have been able to grow indoors. Roses climbed the walls, their vines weaving through the structure as if they were part of the house's skeleton. In the center stood a garden table, and seated there was an elderly woman in a white dress, her gray hair pulled back in an elegant bun. "Mrs. Hargrove?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She smiled, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Detective Reynolds, I've been expecting you. Please sit. The tea is still hot." I remained standing. Margaret Hargrove died 3 years ago. Did I? She tilted her head, studying me with eyes too vibrant for someone of her advanced years. Or did I simply become something else? She gestured around her. The house and I have come to an understanding, you see. Edmund never could. That's why he tried to destroy us both. "Where are the construction workers?" I asked, my hand instinctively moving toward my weapon. Margaret laughed softly. "Somewhere in between, I suppose. The house doesn't mean harm, detective. It simply collects. Those who understand stay, those who fight." She trailed off, looking past me to the doorway. "Ah, they've arrived." I turned to find Johnson and Patel standing in the doorway, their expressions serene, empty, too empty. "What have you done to them?" I demanded. "I've done nothing," Margaret replied. "The house has simply shown them its truth, as it's showing you now. Look around you, detective, really look." Against my better judgment, I did. The walls of the solarium were no longer solid. They seemed to breathe, to pulse with a gentle rhythm. The roses weren't growing on the walls, they were growing from them, extensions of the house itself. And beyond the glass panes, I could see not the property grounds, but somewhere else entirely. A landscape of impossible architecture, houses that defied physics, gardens that bloomed with colors that had no name. "What is this place?" I whispered. "A threshold," Margaret answered simply. "Edmund tried to burn it away, but you can't destroy a threshold once it's been opened. The house rebuilt itself because it was never truly gone. It exists in multiple places at once. And now so do I." She stood, approaching me with measured steps. "The question is, Detective Reynolds, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you join us in understanding, or will you fight like Edmund did?" I backed toward the door, but found my path blocked by Johnson and Patel, their eyes now reflecting the same unnatural vibrancy as Margaret's. "You don't have to decide right away," Margaret continued, her voice gentle, hypnotic. "The house is patient. It has existed between worlds for centuries. A few more days won't matter." As she spoke, I felt the floor shift beneath me, the walls pulsing more rapidly. The roses began to bloom and wither in accelerated cycles, releasing a sweet, dizzying fragrance. "I need to leave," I managed to say, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. Margaret smiled sadly. "Of course, the front door is always open to those who wish to go. But remember, detective, once you've seen the threshold, it sees you too. The house knows where you live now. It might visit." I pushed past Johnson and Patel, their bodies unnaturally warm as my shoulders brushed against them. I hurried down the hallway, down the stairs that now seemed to stretch and contract with each step. The front door stood open, sunlight streaming in, deceptively normal. As I crossed the threshold out of the house, I heard Margaret's voice one last time. "We'll keep your seat at the table, detective. Everyone returns to the house eventually." Outside, the foreman was still waiting, his face creased with concern. "Did you find my men?" I turned back to point at the house, to explain what I'd seen, but where the Hargrove mansion had stood just moments before, there was nothing but a charred foundation, overgrown with weeds and scattered debris. Exactly what should have been there all along. "Detective," the foreman pressed, "are you all right?" I closed my notebook, noticing for the first time that all my notes had disappeared. the pages now blank except for a single line at the bottom of the last page. The house knows where you live now. Call off the demolition, I told him, walking quickly toward my car. This site needs to be secured pending further investigation. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse in my rearview mirror, just for a second, of a Victorian silhouette rising against the sky, its windows glinting in the sunlight. When I blinked, it was gone. But in my pocket, my notebook felt warm to the touch, and the scent of roses filled my car, growing stronger with each passing mile toward home. That was 6 months ago. Yesterday, I found a door in my apartment that wasn't there before. Behind it, I can hear the gentle creak of a rocking chair, and sometimes, when the light is just right, I catch the scent of freshly brewed tea drifting from underneath. I haven't opened it, not yet, but I know I will eventually. The house is patient, and so is Margaret. Story 8. I've been in hotel security for 17 years. I've seen it all, the eccentric guests, the missing items, the occasional false alarms. But what happened at the Elmwood Hotel changed everything I thought I knew about observation and evidence. The Elmwood stood like a dignified elder on the corner of Maple and Fifth, its brick facade darkened by decades of city exhaust, its brass fixtures dulled but still elegant. A boutique hotel with 47 rooms, each meticulously maintained by a staff who took pride in their attention to detail. I was brought in to review their security protocols after what management carefully referred to as a series of unusual occurrences in room 207. It started in late October when the maple trees outside were shedding their amber leaves against the gray sky. The first report came from a business traveler, a middle-aged woman from Cincinnati who had checked in for 3 nights. She'd placed her suitcase on the luggage rack, hung her blouses in the closet, and arranged her toiletries in the bathroom before heading out to a conference. When she returned that evening, the room was immaculate, too immaculate. Her belongings were gone, not stolen, not moved, simply gone, as if she had never checked in. The front desk clerk, a young man named Marcus with impeccable posture and a careful smile, insisted she must have the wrong room, but her key card worked. The hotel records confirmed she was assigned to 207, yet there was no evidence anyone had occupied the room that day. The bed was pristine, the towels untouched. I sat in the hotel manager's office, a small room with dark wood paneling and the faint smell of lemon polish, reviewing the security footage. The camera in the hallway showed the woman entering room 207 at 7:43 a.m. with her luggage, then leaving at 8:17 a.m. with just her purse. No one else entered the room until she returned at 6:22 p.m. No housekeeping, no maintenance, no other guests. Between those times, the hallway remained empty, except for occasional guests passing by to access their own rooms. We assumed it was an isolated incident, the manager said, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm on the polished desk. We compensated her, of course. New toiletries, clothing allowance, profuse apologies. But 2 weeks later it happened again. A young couple from Seattle, same room, same circumstances. Their belongings vanished during their absence, the room reset to perfect vacancy. And again, the security cameras showed no one entering or leaving except the guests themselves. I ran my fingers along the cool metal edge of the desk lamp, considering the possibilities. What about the adjoining room? Could someone be accessing 207 that way? The manager shook his head. Room 209 adjoins it, but the connecting door is locked from both sides. We checked. The seal of dust on the door frame was undisturbed. By December, there had been 5 incidents. Each time, the guests' belongings disappeared without a trace. Each time, no evidence of entry. Each time, room 207 looked as if it had been waiting for a new guest all along. I decided to stay in the room myself. On a Tuesday evening, I checked in under an assumed name, carrying a single suitcase containing clothes, toiletries, and several small items I had secretly marked with UV ink. I made a show of unpacking, deliberately leaving items in specific positions that I photographed with my phone. A novel splayed open on page 78, a blue tie draped over the chair at precisely 45 degrees. A wallet placed so that Washington's face on the dollar bill peeked out exactly half an inch. The hotel staff knew me by now, but had no idea I was conducting this experiment. I left the "Do Not Disturb" sign on the door before heading out for breakfast at 8:30 a.m. The hallway was quiet, the plush carpet muffling my footsteps as I walked toward the elevator. I nodded to a housekeeper pushing her cart toward the opposite wing. I deliberately stayed away for hours, nursing coffee at a cafe across the street where I could watch the hotel entrance. At 2:17 p.m., I returned to room 207, my pulse quickening as I slid the key card into the lock. The green light blinked, the door swung open. Everything was gone, my suitcase, my clothes, my marked items all vanished. The bed was made with fresh linens, the bathroom spotless with new toiletries arranged in perfect symmetry on the counter. The novel I had left open was nowhere to be found. The room smelled faintly of the hotel's signature lavender cleaning spray. I pulled out my phone and reviewed the hall camera footage I had remote access to. Between my departure and return, only 2 people had approached room 207. A housekeeper who paused, noted the "Do Not Disturb" sign, and continued past, and a maintenance worker who walked by without stopping, carrying a toolbox toward the ice machine area. I searched the room meticulously, checked under the bed, behind the curtains, inside the air vents, nothing. I ran my fingers along the walls, seeking hidden panels or secret compartments. The room kept its silence. That night, I interviewed the maintenance worker, a man named Ellis who had worked at the Elmwood for 32 years. "Have you noticed anything unusual about room 207? I asked, watching his weathered face for reactions as we sat in the quiet corner of the hotel's empty bar. Ellis took a slow sip of his water, ice cubes clinking against glass. "That room has always been different," he said finally. "Temperature never quite stays right. Thermostat says 72, but it feels colder. Light bulbs burn out faster, small things." "What about the guests' belongings disappearing?" His eyes met mine, steady and unblinking. "Never seen anything get taken, but I've seen things move." "Move hell." "Little things, a pen that was on the desk appearing on the nightstand when no one went in, a pair of glasses turning to face the other direction. Once I walked past as a guest was checking in. Glanced through the open door, saw her put her purse on the bed. Walked past again not 10 seconds later, and the purse was on the chair instead. Guest never touched it." A shiver traveled up my spine despite the warmth of the bar. "Have you told anyone else this?" Ellis shook his head. "Who'd believe an old maintenance man? Besides, it's a nice hotel. Don't want to start rumors." The next day I set up my own surveillance. Tiny cameras hidden in smoke detectors, motion sensors under the desk and bed, thermal imaging scanning the walls. I checked in again, this time with a suitcase containing a GPS tracker sewn into the lining. I left at precisely 9 a.m. By 9:15, all my equipment went offline simultaneously. The GPS tracker's signal vanished. When I rushed back to the room, everything was gone again. The room reset, pristine and vacant. The hotel's management was growing increasingly concerned. Guests were being relocated, refunded, appeased with free stays. Room 207 was officially taken out of rotation, listed as under renovation in the system. I spent nights in the adjacent rooms, listening through the walls, days reviewing footage that showed nothing unusual until the moment everything disappeared. I interviewed every staff member, checked their backgrounds, their alibis, their access cards. I searched for hidden passageways, for secret entrances, for any explanation that made sense in the physical world. One night, sitting alone in the hotel bar after another frustrating day, I noticed an elderly woman watching me from across the room. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon, her posture perfect as she sipped her martini. Something about her seemed familiar, though I couldn't place her. She approached my table without invitation, setting down her drink with a steady hand. "You're the one investigating room 207, she said, not a question. "I am. Did you have an experience there?" A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "I was the very first guest when this hotel opened in 1951. Room 207 was my room then. It's always been my room." I felt the hairs rise on the back of my neck. "What do you mean?" "I check in every few months, stay a night or two. The staff changes, but the room remembers." She traced a pattern on the table with one finger. "Sometimes other guests get assigned there by mistake. The room corrects the error by making their belongings disappear." She nodded. "The room belongs to me. It always returns to the state I prefer, empty, waiting for my return." I studied her face, looking for signs of delusion or mischief. "That's impossible." "Is it? Have you found any other explanation that fits the facts?" She finished her drink and stood. "Check the registry from 1951. Alina Winters, room 207. I've been coming back ever since." Before I could respond, she walked away, disappearing into the lobby. The next morning, I pulled the hotel's original guest ledger from their archives. Yellowed pages, faded ink. Opening day, September 17, 1951. Room 207, Alina Winters. I searched newspaper archives, property records, death certificates. Alina Winters had indeed been a regular guest at the Elmwood for decades. According to the records, she had died in 1973, yet her signature appeared in guest books throughout the years since, always for room 207, always for short stays. The mystery of room 207 remains officially unsolved. The hotel eventually converted it to a storage closet, removing the bed, the furniture, everything that made it a guest room. But sometimes, staff members report opening the door to find it restored, bed made, curtains drawn, awaiting a specific guest who always seems to find her way back. I've moved on to other cases, other hotels with more conventional security concerns. But sometimes, when I'm driving past the Elmwood, I glance up at the window of room 207 and wonder if Alina is there, sitting quietly in a room that remembers her preference for emptiness, for readiness, for eternal waiting. In my 17 years of security work, I've learned that most mysteries have logical explanations. Most, but not all. Some spaces hold onto something beyond our understanding. Some guests never truly check out, and some rooms never truly forget. Story 9. I remember the first time Martha Klein called me about the phone beneath her floorboards. Her voice trembled slightly over the line, not from fear exactly, but from that peculiar discomfort that comes when reality shifts just enough to make you question your senses. It was early December, and outside my office window, A gentle snow was beginning to dust the sleeping town of Oak Ridge. "Detective Harmon," she said, "I know how this sounds, but there's a phone ringing in my house, under the floor. I've been a detective in this small Massachusetts town for 23 years. Most of what I investigate are petty thefts, the occasional domestic dispute, or teenagers vandalizing the old paper mill. But something in Martha's voice made me reach for my notepad, the worn leather one I've carried since my first day on the job. "Tell me more, Mrs. Klein," I said, my pen hovering over the blank page. The radiator in my office hissed softly, releasing warmth into the room that couldn't quite reach my fingers. Martha had moved into the Victorian house on Elm Street just 3 months prior. Built in 1897, it had all the charm and quirks of houses from that era: ornate moldings, a sweeping staircase, and floors that announced every footstep with a distinct creak or groan. She'd been renovating room by room, peeling away decades of wallpaper and paint, uncovering the home's hidden stories layer by layer. "At first I thought it was my cell phone," she continued, her words measured and deliberate. "But it wasn't. It was coming from underneath my bedroom floor, a old-fashioned ring like from when I was a child, and it only happens at night, always at 2:17 a.m. I wrote down the time, 2:17 a.m. Specific times often matter in the cases that linger longest in my files, the ones that remain open, yellowing at the edges as years pass. 2 days later, I stood in Martha's bedroom as evening settled around the house. The December air had turned bitter, and even inside I could see my breath forming small clouds when I exhaled. Martha had prepared the room, moving the antique four-poster bed to one side, revealing a section of hardwood flooring that seemed slightly discolored compared to the rest. "It's always right here," she said, pointing to the darkened planks with a slippered foot. "3 nights in a row now, always the same time." I nodded, settling into an armchair in the corner of the room. Martha had provided a thermos of coffee, which I balanced on my knee. The ceiling light cast long shadows across the floor, and as we waited, the house began to speak in the language of old homes, a symphony of settling wood, expanding and contracting pipes, and the gentle whispers of drafts finding their way through century-old window frames. "The previous owners," I asked, warming my hands around the thermos, "what do you know about them?" Martha sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers absently tracing patterns on the quilt. "Not much. An elderly couple, the Prestons. They lived here for almost 50 years before moving to a retirement community in Florida. The realtor mentioned they were eager to sell." We spoke quietly as midnight approached, then passed. Martha dozed off around 1, but I remained awake, watching the play of moonlight through lace curtains onto the suspicious section of floor. My years as a detective had taught me patience, the quiet art of waiting for evidence to reveal itself. At exactly 2:17 a.m. I heard it, a muffled but unmistakable ringing, the distinctive sound of a rotary phone, dulled by dirt and wood but persistent. It seemed to pulse through the floorboards themselves, vibrating in my bones more than my ears. Martha startled awake, her eyes immediately finding mine in the darkness. "You hear it too," she whispered, "not a question." The ringing continued for precisely 45 seconds before stopping abruptly. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. "I need tools," I said simply. By 3 a.m. we had pried up several floorboards, revealing the dark soil beneath the house. The smell of damp earth filled the room, rich, primordial, and tinged with something metallic that made my nostrils flare. Martha held a flashlight steady as I carefully brushed away soil with gloved hands. The beam of light caught something solid, a curved edge of black bakelite emerging from the dirt like an archaeological discovery. With growing certainty, I excavated around it, revealing a rotary telephone from the 1950s, its cord disappearing deeper into the soil. "It's not connected to anything," Martha said, her voice barely audible. "How could it ring?" I didn't answer as I continued to dig alongside the cord. The house seemed to hold its breath around us, or perhaps it was just us, forgetting to breathe as the flashlight beam revealed what the cord led to. Bones, human fingers, still clutching the severed end of the phone cord. Over the next 72 hours, my quiet investigation transformed into a full excavation. The county forensic team worked methodically beneath Martha's bedroom floor, unearthing the remains of what appeared to be a young woman. She had been buried there for decades, the phone placed in the grave with her, its cord wrapped around skeletal fingers in a macabre final connection. The medical examiner estimated the remains to be approximately 45 years old. Around the same time, the Prestons had purchased the house. A search through archived missing persons reports brought me to the county records room, where I spent hours flipping through brittle pages documenting the disappeared of the early 1970s. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the dust of forgotten lives tickled my nose as I searched. Her name was Elizabeth Morrow, 23 years old when she vanished in September 1974, a telephone operator at the local exchange. The last person to see her alive was her fiancé, Thomas Preston, son of the elderly couple who had lived in the house for half a century. The investigation file was thin. Thomas Preston had reported her missing 3 days after she allegedly left town following an argument. No one questioned him deeply. No one connected him to the gradual remodeling of his parents' house that fall, the new floorboards in what would become the master bedroom. By the time we pieced it all together, Thomas Preston had been dead for 2 years, a heart attack in his Florida retirement community. His parents, now in their 90s, had no memory they seemed willing to access when questioned about Elizabeth or the renovations to their old home. The case should have felt closed. We had found Elizabeth. We knew who had likely put her there. But something continued to trouble me as I finalized my reports, something about the phone. "Detective Harmon," Martha called me a week after we had restored her bedroom floor and she had moved back in. "It's still ringing." I returned to her house that night. At 2:17 a.m., the phantom ring came again, not from beneath the floor now, but seemingly from within the walls themselves. Following the sound, we traced it to a hollow space behind the bedroom closet. Inside, we found a small wooden box containing a single item, a diamond engagement ring tarnished with age. The county records revealed one final detail. Elizabeth Morrow had disappeared exactly 1 week after breaking off her engagement to Thomas Preston. September 17, 1974. She would have finished her shift at the telephone exchange at 2:15 a.m. The phone beneath Martha's floor never rang again after we placed Elizabeth's ring with her remains at the cemetery. But sometimes, when I drive past the old Victorian house on Elm Street late at night, I find myself checking my watch. Some connections, it seems, transcend both time and death, and some calls once missed will keep ringing until someone finally answers. Story 10. In the heart of the city, there stood a quaint coffee shop where time seemed to slow down and mysteries unfolded in the quiet corners. For years, a man had made this place his sanctuary, a place of routine and solitude. Every day he would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee, and immerse himself in silence. The barista recognized his face, but to the world he was a nameless enigma. Then one day the man didn't show up. Concerned, the police paid a visit to his usual seat and found a wallet left behind. Inside, they discovered a driver's license with a photo, yet the space where his name should have been was eerily blank. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the case, her fingertips tracing the cold metal table as she pored over the security footage. The man, now known as John Doe, had walked in, taken his usual spot, and then vanished, a disappearance so perplexing it sent shivers down the spines of all who unraveled the mystery. As Mercer replayed the footage, a sense of unease crept over her. John had appeared entirely ordinary on the screen, average in every way, his features blending into the background. His sudden disappearance defied logic, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The tech specialist revealed a chilling detail. John had never entered the restroom, nor had he exited through any door. It was as though he had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind a void in the fabric of reality. Back at the station, Mercer sifted through the contents of the wallet, each item whispering fragments of a story untold. The driver's license held no clues, the credit cards bore no names, and the business card led to silence on the other end of the line. The barista's recollections offered little insight into the enigmatic man. He had been a solitary figure, a quiet presence in a bustling world, always scribbling in a mysterious notebook. Cryptographers struggled to decipher the notebook's contents, coded messages, enigmatic sketches, and architectural designs that defied reality. Mercer's investigation led her down a rabbit hole of uncertainty, where each clue only deepened the enigma. A peculiar detail caught Mercer's eye in the security footage, a flicker in time as John entered the shop, a glitch that hinted at something beyond comprehension. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer found herself drawn to an antique mirror that hung between realms, its ornate frame whispering secrets of ages past. Behind the mirror, a hidden space revealed a cache of identical wallets and a journal filled with entries penned by a phantom hand. The final entry spoke of experiments in temporal manipulation, of windows between worlds that beckoned the curious. As the investigation unfolded, the fabric of reality began to fray around the coffee shop, echoes of a presence that transcended boundaries. Sightings of John Doe multiplied, reflections moved of their own accord, and the line between what was real and what was imagined blurred. An elderly woman, Margaret Keller, shed light on the enigma, unraveling a tale of a brilliant physicist named Daniel Weston, who had delved into the mysteries of quantum mirrors and parallel realities. Weston's experiments had torn a hole in the fabric of existence, leading him to a fate beyond comprehension. Mercer's journey led her back to the coffee shop's origins, to a nexus of realities where Weston's legacy lingered. There, in the shattered remnants of the mirror, she saw a glimpse of the truth, an echo of Weston watching himself, a man split between worlds. With the mirror shattered, the gateway closed, and the enigma of John Doe unresolved, the coffee shop faded into memory. Daniel Weston's fate remained a mystery, his essence scattered across dimensions. And as the final note whispered warnings of closed windows and forbidden paths, Mercer found herself haunted by the echoes of a man who existed in the spaces between realities. The tale of the man who didn't exist lingered in the shadows, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. Story 11. The ancient library faced its fate of demolition. The workers diligently carried out their tasks, nearing completion when a peculiar event unfolded. Among them, a worker stumbled upon a concealed latch cleverly hidden within the bookshelf. With a soft click, the entire case swung open, revealing a narrow passageway leading to a secret room. The air inside was heavy, untouched for decades. There was no furniture except for a solitary chair in the center, firmly bolted to the floor. And etched repeatedly on the wall, a haunting message loomed: "I am still here." The construction foreman swiftly contacted the police, transforming what seemed like a routine demolition into something far more ominous. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, arrived at the scene. As he stood in the doorway, his flashlight pierced through the darkness, casting an eerie glow on the walls covered with the unsettling message. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the confined space. "No one disturbs anything until the forensics team arrives." The backstory of the building added layers of intrigue to the unfolding mystery. The library had once belonged to the Harrington family, esteemed members of the community, who had graciously donated the building to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Her vanishing during her final year of college had left no clues except for her abandoned car discovered near the woods. Despite extensive search efforts and interviews, the case had grown cold, with the prevailing belief suggesting she had chosen to vanish. However, her family vehemently rejected this notion, convinced of a darker truth. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden room, traces of hair and fibers embedded in the chair caught their attention. The scratches on the wall harbored minute specks of blood and skin cells beneath the layers of dust. Initial findings pointed to the biological material belonging to a young woman who had struggled fiercely while in captivity. Walsh mobilized a team to delve into the history of the Harrington family. The timing of the library donation nagged at him, occurring shortly after Rebecca's disappearance, a peculiar coincidence that now held potential significance. Further inquiries unveiled a disturbing revelation. The contractor responsible for installing the bookshelf hiding the secret room had close ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records indicated exorbitant payments made to this contractor, surpassing standard renovation costs by far. Former library staff expressed shock at the discovery, with none aware of the concealed space. However, an elderly librarian remembered Maxwell spending countless hours alone in that section of the building after hours, attributing it to his purported interest in the historical significance of the original woodwork. The investigation took a chilling turn when DNA evidence from the hidden room matched samples from Rebecca's belongings found in her old bedroom. The pieces of the puzzle started to fit together, painting a grim picture. Rebecca had not fled. She had been held captive behind the bookshelf, likely by someone within her own family. Armed with a warrant, detectives scoured the Harrington estate, leading them to Maxwell's study, where a hidden journal was unearthed from a false bottom drawer. The journal chronicled months of disturbing entries detailing Maxwell's unhealthy fixation on his niece. The final entry sent shivers down their spines. She threatened to expose everything. "I couldn't let her. The room will keep her until she understands." Cornered by irrefutable evidence, Maxwell, now residing in a coastal retirement community, crumbled under questioning. He confessed to the chilling truth: Rebecca had stumbled upon proof of his embezzlement from the family foundation, prompting him to imprison her in the hidden room. His plan had been to coerce her into silence, but a tragic turn of events had led to her demise. I had no choice, Maxwell confessed in a monotone voice. The family's reputation was at stake. I had to protect it. The grim confession unveiled a macabre sequence of events. Maxwell had lured Rebecca to the library, where he had imprisoned her and ultimately taken her life during a struggle. He had buried her beneath the floorboards of a hidden room, sealing her fate along with the truth of her disappearance. Excavation beneath the room's floor confirmed the presence of human remains, revealing Rebecca's skeletal figure adorned with the silver bracelet her parents had gifted her on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family silently witnessed Maxwell's sentencing, finding closure as justice was served. Rebecca's mother clutched the bracelet, a poignant memento of her lost daughter. The halt on the library's demolition turned it into a place of remembrance and contemplation. Community members left flowers at the entrance, honoring Rebecca's memory and the long-awaited revelation of the truth that had lurked behind a mere bookshelf. In a haunting twist of fate, Rebecca's engraved plea, "I am still here," ensured her presence would never fade, her story echoing through the halls of justice and remembrance. Story 12. The gentle current whispered its lullaby that morning, the water reflecting the sky like a polished mirror. The fisherman's boat glided smoothly, almost dancing on the glassy surface, undisturbed by ripples. It was a tranquil scene, one that almost lulled him to sleep were it not for the curious object that caught his eye, a lone suitcase, bobbing silently near the shore. At first glance it seemed inconsequential, as if someone had carelessly discarded old clothes. But as he steered his boat closer, a peculiar smell wafted towards him, thick, sweet, and unmistakable. The suitcase was ensnared in chains, its metal edges rusted from exposure to the elements. With a sense of trepidation, he reached out and pried it open, revealing a chilling sight. Inside lay not clothes, but a tangle of hair, fingers frozen into a haunting grasp, and nestled at the bottom, a cryptic note that sent shivers down his spine. "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, the morning light casting long shadows over the grim discovery. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, lay motionless on the shore, her dark hair now matted and her once pale skin marred by the water's embrace. The medical examiner worked diligently, meticulously documenting every detail before the body was respectfully removed. What struck Mercer was not just the brutality of the crime, but the eerie care taken with the victim's appearance: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in luxurious garments. She wasn't just discarded, Mercer mused, her gaze fixed on the tranquil waters. She was arranged, deliberately displayed. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her expertise in selling high-end properties. Divorced, childless, living a solitary life in an affluent neighborhood, her colleagues painted a portrait of a driven, meticulous woman who guarded her privacy fiercely. In the search for answers, investigators combed through Walsh's immaculate home. Every corner exuded perfection, a meticulously curated living space, every item in its proper place. Yet, amidst the pristine facade, a single drawer caught their attention. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its final entry cryptically hinting at a lurking threat. Further examination of Walsh's digital footprint revealed a chilling pattern: mysterious emails, ominous messages hinting at an unseen watcher. Her browser history betrayed a growing unease, a frantic quest for security in a world turned suddenly hostile. Mercer pieced together the puzzle, drawing a connection between the meticulous crime scene and the victim's escalating fears. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided to her partner. This was not a crime of passion, but a meticulously choreographed ritual. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, a pawnshop owner who recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace among his wares. The man who had pawned it was a familiar face, Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker with a penchant for blending into the background. Surveillance footage unveiled Linden's shadowy presence in Walsh's life, his silent comings and goings, his eerie fixation captured on film. A search of his humble abode revealed a trove of unsettling secrets, walls plastered with images of Walsh and other women, their lives unknowingly invaded, their essence captured in stolen moments. In a hidden alcove, investigators uncovered a shrine, a macabre display of personal effects, a twisted tribute to his victims' perceived imperfections. Each item meticulously catalogued, each detail a testament to his meticulous madness. As Linden sat in the interrogation room, his demeanor remained chillingly composed. Confronted with the damning evidence, he offered a chilling confession. "They were flawed," he uttered softly. "They wore masks of perfection, but I saw the truth. Catherine's lipstick always missed a spot. Her desk drawer was always in disarray. Her perfection was a lie." The search for the missing pieces led investigators to remote locales, where two more suitcases unveiled further horrors. Linden's meticulous handiwork, his twisted pursuit of perfection, laid bare in the silent testimonies of his victims. During the trial, Linden sat impassive, a specter of remorseless precision as his crimes were laid bare. His sentence a lifetime behind bars, devoid of redemption or release. For Detective Mercer, the case was closed, the perpetrator captured. Yet, as she gazed out at the tranquil river, her mind drifted to unanswered questions. What inner demons drove Linden to his grisly acts? What darkness lurked beneath his facade of normalcy? As the river meandered onwards, carrying away all traces of the tragedy, Mercer sat at her desk, haunted by the echoes of the past. Copies of Linden's meticulous notebooks lay before her, chilling reminders of the darkness that dwells unseen in the hearts of men. In the stillness of the precinct, a whispered truth lingered, a reminder that in the quietest moments, in the most ordinary lives, shadows may stir, waiting for the mask of perfection to slip, revealing the true face of darkness that lies within. Story 13. The motel was a budget relic, a place where visitors lingered only briefly. The receptionist passed her the key with a peculiar glance. "Just avoid the final door on the left," he murmured. Intrigue tugged at her. Later that night, navigating the shadowy corridor, she halted before it. The doorknob chilled her hand. The door appeared unremarkable until she pressed her ear against it. A presence exhaled from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed wiped away sleepiness, slipping under the yellow barrier tape at the crime scene's entrance. The metallic, sour odor assaulted her senses, a familiar scent of blood. Stains tainted the carpet, melding with the already dark hues. The room presented a paradox, a spotless bathroom, an undisturbed bed, and then a ghastly sight in between. A young woman lay sprawled on the floor, her golden locks splayed like a halo. Her vacant gaze fixated on the ceiling, frozen in a semblance of shock or dread. Reed crouched beside the victim, careful not to disrupt the evidence markers scattered about. "Third occurrence this season," remarked the forensic expert, his tone devoid of emotion as he captured images from various angles. "Same calling card as the prior ones." Reed nodded in silence. The victim adorned elegant attire, a stark contrast to the rundown motel. A designer purse lay open on the nightstand, its contents undisturbed. This was not a robbery. Another motivation propelled this murderer. The motel manager lingered anxiously at the threshold, his complexion pallid. She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined. His voice faltered. The maid discovered her when she came for cleaning. Reed scrutinized the room once more. No signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim. She had either welcomed her assailant in or had known them beforehand. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned photographs to the board. 3 women, all bearing striking resemblances, all found in nondescript motels. The media probed. Rumors of a serial offender circulated within the community. The autopsy findings are in, declared Detective Hayes, dropping a file on Reed's desk. Death by manual strangulation. No DNA beneath the fingernails. No indications of sexual assault. Reed furrowed her brow. This is personal, not just predatory. Days melded as the investigation intensified. Footage from the motel's surveillance yielded no anomalies. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, was a meticulous financial analyst with no known adversaries. Her acquaintances described her as cautious, precise, not someone who would willingly lodge in such a place. A breakthrough emerged during Reed's interview with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man she was involved with, the sister disclosed, her hands trembling around her cup. Someone from the office. She was cryptic about it, said he was complicated. Married, I believe, Reed Langdon. Any mention of a name, she called him C, that's all she divulged. The focus shifted to Werner's workplace. Colleagues depicted her as professional, reserved. None were privy to any relationship. Yet a business card tucked within a desk calendar at Werner's workstation bore the name Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson exuded a flawless facade during questioning, concerned, cooperative, appropriately distant. His alibi seemed airtight, dining with his spouse and another couple. However, a disquiet simmered in his gaze. Did you socialize with Elaine Werner outside of work? Reed inquired casually. A flicker crossed Emerson's face, fleeting enough for anyone else to overlook. Purely professional. Later that week, partial prints from Werner's handbag matched Emerson's. When confronted, his mask cracked. We had a relationship, he confessed, but I terminated it. She threatened to expose me to my wife. Sufficient reason to kill her, Reed pressed. Emerson's demeanor hardened. I never visited that motel, yet records from the motel contradicted his claim. A credit card charge for the adjacent room paid via a corporate card linked to Emerson's firm. Upon searching that room, a concealed camera was discovered in the shared wall vent. The evidence mounted. Fibers from Emerson's distinctive suit aligned with those found on Werner's body. His DNA surfaced on a drinking glass in her room. Examination of his home computer unveiled similar recordings of the 2 prior victims. A pattern emerged. Emerson targeted women resembling his spouse in her youth. He lured them to designated motels, always selecting the room beside the last door on the left, a room prepped with surveillance gear. He documented their encounters, returning later to erase the evidence, the women themselves. In the interrogation chamber, Emerson's facade crumbled. They threatened to ruin everything, he murmured. My standing, my marriage, my existence. The trial concluded swiftly yet dramatically. 3 families witnessed justice unfold in the antiseptic courtroom. Emerson displayed no contrition, maintaining the impassive countenance that served him in the corporate realm. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole. As officers escorted him away, Reed locked eyes with him. Fleetingly, she glimpsed not humanity, but its void, a vacuum where empathy should reside. Dubbed the door on the left case by the media, psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche. True crime enthusiasts dissected every detail, yet for Reed the case remained unclosed. Sometimes strolling through hotel corridors, she found herself tallying doors, pondering the hidden secrets within. In the evidence vault secluded from public view, 3 identical motel keys endure, labeled and archived. Tangible reminders that certain doors, once ajar, can never be shut again. Story 14. The apartment had sat in silence for months before the new tenants arrived. Their expectations were low, anticipating only a layer of dust and perhaps some abandoned furniture. However, one door remained stubbornly closed, refusing to yield to their efforts. It was a closet, mysteriously locked from within. When the landlord finally broke the seal, the tenants braced themselves for musty coats or forgotten trinkets. But what they discovered was far more unsettling. The walls bore deep, jagged scratches, etched into the wood as if by frantic hands. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone, its screen still faintly illuminated by an unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw had witnessed her fair share of disturbing scenes in her time on the force. Yet this discovery sent a shiver down her spine, not from the sight of blood or violence, but from the silent screams echoed in those scratch marks. It was clear that someone had been trapped within that confined space, battling against invisible adversaries. "We need forensics on the scene immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who was diligently documenting the eerie markings, "and gather all records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone simply whispered, "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually clammy hands, nervously recounted how the previous tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unpaid rent. A quiet young woman kept to herself, left about 6 months ago, he stammered, avoiding eye contact and pointedly ignoring the closet. Forensic analysis unveiled multiple blood samples interwoven within the scratches on the walls. Most matched a single individual, presumably the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported absent from her job when she ceased attendance. However, 2 DNA profiles stood out. One remained a mystery to the system, while the other belonged to a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This doesn't make sense," Shaw muttered, scrutinizing the perplexing lab results. Derek Mercer, a convicted felon who had supposedly perished in a tragic accident, now left his genetic imprint within the confines of the closet. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form a chilling picture of interrupted lives and hidden horrors. Emma's living space spoke volumes of an interrupted existence. Unopened mail stacked high, an abandoned coffee mug in the sink, a bed meticulously made. Her phone records hinted at a sudden cessation of communication with her sister, replaced by a flurry of calls from an unknown number preceding her disappearance. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed reported. No name, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured Emma's arrival at her building, closely followed by a shadowy figure in a baseball cap, deliberately concealing his features from the cameras. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly aligning, painting a sinister portrait of deceit and manipulation. The breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's interior doorknob. "He faked his own death," Shaw concluded. "The question remains why and what ties him to Emma." The unidentified DNA sample led them to another missing persons case. Lynette Porter, vanished 3 years prior, shared a resemblance to a woman frequently seen visiting Emma. Shaw connected the dots through meticulous review of traffic camera footage, leading them to a secluded property linked to Mercer's family. Behind fortified basement doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter alive but starved, imprisoned in conditions mirroring Emma's captivity. "He made me watch," Lynette whimpered, her eyes vacant. "Said I needed to learn the fate of those who try to escape." A trove of evidence surfaced. Journals detailing Mercer's fixation on dominance, photographs of women reminiscent of Emma and Lynette, and damning video recordings of Mercer coercing Emma into the closet. He thought she could expose me, his voice echoed on the recordings. No one reveals my secrets. The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned across jurisdictions. While authorities pursued him, forensic profilers delved into his psyche, unearthing a chilling desire not just to end lives, but to prolong suffering within confined spaces, relishing the slow erosion of hope. Upon his capture at a bus terminal, Mercer clutched a new identity and a ticket to an undisclosed coastal destination. Packed within his bag, duct tape, a hunting knife, and a newspaper clipping chronicling Emma's disappearance. During interrogation, Mercer exuded a disconcertingly calm demeanor. She sent that message herself, he claimed of the phone. She sought salvation, but she was unworthy of rescue. The trial exposed Mercer's intricate web of deception, including the elaborate ruse to fabricate his own demise by utilizing dental records from a deceased vagrant who bore a resemblance. For years, he had lurked beneath the radar, targeting women resembling his initial victim, Emma, whose body was never recovered. The jury swiftly delivered a unanimous guilty verdict after a mere 4 hours of deliberation. As the judge imposed a life sentence devoid of parole, Mercer's lips curved into a faint smile, as if the outcome aligned with an enigmatic logic known only to him. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the court. He confined us to small spaces because that's where his mind dwells trapped in shadows. While he decays in his cell, I'll bask in the sunlight. This case reshaped departmental procedures for missing persons investigations, emphasizing scrutiny of relationship dynamics and thorough searches of rented properties. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment in her office, a poignant reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes are not always drenched in blood, but etched with the desperate marks of those fighting for survival. Story 15. In the quiet town, there was a house at the edge of the woods, a house that the townspeople never spoke of. It stood solitary, its windows darkened, its porch weary under the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, and its origins remained a mystery lost to the whispers of the wind. Yet when a group of wandering hikers stumbled upon it, they beheld a sight both eerie and intriguing, names etched deeply into the wooden siding, as if eternally warning those who dared to draw near. Among the list of names, one stood out fresh and untouched by the passage of time, a name unfamiliar to the group. It wasn't until a voice quivered in the stillness claiming ownership of that name that the mystery began to unravel. The call came in the dead of night, a simple report of trespassing, or so it seemed. Mason Wright, the hiker who discovered his own name carved into the aged walls of the abandoned house, spoke to the dispatch with a tremor in his voice. As the responding officers arrived, expecting a mere case of vandalism, they were met with a puzzle that defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller stepped into the forest as night draped its cloak over the land. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, revealing the weathered facade of the enigmatic structure. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the eastern wall like a haunting melody. Some names had almost faded into oblivion, while others remained starkly visible, their carvings fresh as if made just moments before. And at the very bottom, Mason Wright, a name still bearing the scent of newly sawn wood. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his breath forming wisps in the frigid air. "How could anyone know my name?" Thus began an investigation that would unravel the threads of time and mystery woven into the very fabric of the house and the woods that cradled it. Background checks on each name led to a chilling revelation. Every name belonged to a soul reported missing over the past 40 years, vanishing into the depths of the woods while hiking alone. Some cases had grown cold, others remained open, but all shared a haunting similarity: the disappeared ventured into the woods and never returned. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, studying the depths, techniques, and aging patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance 37 years prior, a young woman lost to the forest without a trace. Detective Keller delved into Mason's story, finding no link between him and the other names on the wall. His friends were scrutinized, and unsettling findings emerged from the photographs. They had taken a spectral figure lurking in the background, unseen by the naked eye. A search of the house interior revealed a macabre tableau in the basement, personal effects of the missing hikers meticulously arranged on shelves, each item labeled with a name from the wall outside. Bloodstains hinted at a grim past, a past someone had desperately tried to conceal. Yet no bodies lay buried beneath the house, leading the investigation deeper into the heart of the forest where the trees whispered ancient secrets. As the hunt intensified, Mason's demeanor grew increasingly erratic, haunted by unseen forces that shadowed his every step. The discovery of land records unveiled a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood, whose connections to the house sent shivers down the spines of those involved. Victor had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of dread that now loomed over the investigation. Further exploration of the forest unearthed a chilling network of hunting blinds, each a silent witness to Victor's twisted game. A journal found within one blind chronicled the descent of a man into madness, his prey shifting from animals to unsuspecting humans. The manhunt for Victor escalated, but he remained a phantom, taunting those who sought to unravel his dark designs. Mason Wright vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic message on his bedroom wall that echoed through the empty rooms. The forensic technician, too, fell prey to Victor's insidious machinations, disappearing without a trace, leaving behind a freshly carved name waiting to join the haunting list on the house's wall. Surveillance tightened around the house, a silent vigil against the encroaching darkness. When the figure emerged from the forest, tall and ethereal, the trap was set. Yet, in a blink of an eye, the figure dissolved into the night, leaving behind only whispers of its presence. To this day, the house stands under watchful eyes, a beacon of mystery and dread. Mason and the technician remain lost to the shadows, their fates entwined with the enigma of the woods. The investigation endures, drawing new resources as disappearances echo in distant forests. The names on the wall have become a whispered legend, a cautionary tale that lingers in the hearts of those who dare to speak of the house at the edge of the woods, where the names of the lost are etched in silence. Story 16. The worn envelope, its edges tinged with age, held within it a fresh stamp marked just days prior. With cautious hands, the detective unfolded the letter, revealing a single sheet of paper bearing a message typed hastily in an uneven font. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying with it a metallic scent that lingered in the air. It was then that the detective noticed a reddish smear along the bottom edge of the letter, a stain that was not made of ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, donning her gloves, carefully placed the letter into an evidence bag, her movements precise and practiced. The forensics team's findings confirmed her suspicion the reddish stain was indeed human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had tormented the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment with multiple stab wounds, her laptop missing, and her notes scattered, a grim reflection of a life interrupted. The investigation had hit a dead end despite tireless efforts and countless leads. And now this enigmatic letter had found its way to the homicide division, bearing the weight of secrets untold. The paper and envelope bore few fingerprints, only faint smudges hinting at the sender's cautious touch. The postmark, however, offered a glimmer of hope, a thread to follow in the darkness that had shrouded the case for so long. Detective Morgan gathered her team in the dimly lit briefing room, the walls adorned with the stark images of crime scenes, timelines, and profiles of suspects who had slipped through their grasp. She affixed the image of the letter at the heart of the board, a harbinger of change. "This shifts our perspective," she murmured to the room. "Our perpetrator harbors remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, studied the letter intently. "Or perhaps they seek to deceive us," he offered. "The blood a mere theatrical ploy to toy with our minds." The forensic team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production, a relic from a bygone era, now resurfacing in the present. Their search extended to antique shops and collectors across the region, each lit a flicker of hope in the encroaching shadows. As the investigation unfolded, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life, uncovering her relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Her investigation into a prominent family embroiled in local politics had uncovered a web of deceit and betrayal. The detectives turned their attention to Michael Barnes, Rebecca's boyfriend, whose demeanor now betrayed a hint of unease in the wake of the letter's arrival. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed, his voice laced with regret. "I dismissed her concerns as paranoia, blinded by my own ignorance." As they pursued this new light, a second letter materialized, bearing the same typewritten message, the same chilling stain. This time the confession was longer, revealing a tangled web of secrets. She delved too deep into the family's affairs, the inheritance, the patriarch's demise. It was never meant to end this way. The trail led them to the grand mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they encountered Richard, the eldest son, whose collection of antiquities included vintage typewriters akin to those used for the letters. His demeanor, polished and rehearsed, betrayed a facade crumbling under scrutiny. The breakthrough arrived with the discovery of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, a match to custom stationery belonging to Alina, the youngest daughter of the family. Under questioning, Alina divulged Richard's request to borrow her stationery, a seemingly innocuous act that now held sinister implications. A search of Richard's residence unearthed a hidden chamber, a vault of incriminating evidence, clippings, surveillance, and the vintage typewriter that had penned the damning letters. The blood, upon analysis, bore the unmistakable imprint of Rebecca's identity. But what stunned the detectives was the clandestine connection between Richard and Michael, revealed through damning financial transactions that painted a picture of betrayal and greed. Confronted with the evidence, Michael's facade crumbled. "I informed Richard of Rebecca's discoveries," he confessed, his voice trembling with regret. "I never fathomed he would resort to such measures." The final revelation came in the form of a covert recording provided by Alina, a damning conversation between Richard and Michael, plotting Rebecca's demise. Richard's chilling declaration rang through the air: she must be silenced once and for all. In a swift motion, Richard's flight from justice was halted, his arrest a testament to the unraveling of his carefully constructed facade. The trial that followed showcased a mosaic of evidence: the letters, the typewriter, the financial transactions, all weaving a tapestry of guilt around the accused. Michael, offered a plea deal, stood as a witness to the horrors that had transpired. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, his words a feeble shield against the weight of truth. But justice, unwavering in its pursuit, prevailed. The jury's verdict, swift and resolute, sealed Richard's fate, a fate he had sealed with his own hands. As he was led away, shackled by the chains of his misdeeds, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the face of irreparable loss. The blood-stained letters, now confined to the confines of evidence storage, stood as a testament to the fragility of deception and the enduring power of truth. The case of Rebecca Warren echoed through the halls of detective training, a stark reminder that the most intricate puzzles can unravel with the simplest of clues, that the weight of guilt can crush even the most carefully laid plans. And in the quiet of the night, as the world drifted into slumber, the echoes of justice lingered on, a silent lullaby for those haunted by shadows of the past. Story 17. Intriguing whispers from the past echoed through the walls of the Victorian-era home that Michael and Sarah Klein had recently acquired. The house, steeped in history and mystery, beckoned to them with its ornate woodwork and high ceilings, a relic of a bygone era. Little did they know that within these walls lay a chilling secret waiting to be uncovered. It all began innocently enough, with a simple water stain marring the master bedroom's floral wallpaper. As Sarah traced the yellow discoloration, a curiosity stirred within them. With gentle fingertips, they peeled back the layers, revealing a hidden narrative beneath the surface. Layer by layer, they uncovered a haunting truth. Written in dark ink, the name Eleanor Winters sprawled across the wall in a frenzied, repetitive script. Who was this mysterious Eleanor Winters, and why was her name etched into the very fabric of the house? Their quest for answers led them down a rabbit hole of intrigue and uncertainty. Online searches yielded a single result, a missing persons case from decades past, featuring a woman who bore a striking resemblance to the enigmatic Margaret Cavendish, the previous owner of the house. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, painting a picture of deception and tragedy. Eleanor Winters, a young woman who vanished without a trace, seemed to have found an unlikely echo in Margaret Cavendish, the woman who had sold them the house. As Michael and Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, their home transformed from a sanctuary into a haunting reminder of a dark past. The discovery of hidden spaces and forgotten identities only deepened the enigma, blurring the line between reality and illusion. Forensic investigations unearthed long-buried secrets, linking the names on the wall to a troubled soul caught in a web of fractured identities. Rebecca Eldridge, a psychiatric patient with a harrowing past, had woven a tangled tapestry of personas in a desperate bid to hold onto her sanity. The walls themselves whispered of betrayal and tragedy, bearing witness to a crime that had remained hidden for far too long. With each revelation, the house seemed to exhale a sigh of relief, as if eager to unburden itself of the weight of its dark history. In the end, justice prevailed, but not without leaving scars on the souls of those who had dared to unravel the mysteries within. Michael and Sarah's dream home had become a haunting symbol, a testament to the enduring power of truth and the shadows that lurked behind closed doors. As the sun set on the old Victorian house, casting long shadows across its weathered facade, a sense of peace descended upon the weary souls of its inhabitants. The ghosts of the past had been laid to rest, their stories etched into the very fabric of the walls, a whispered lullaby for the curious and the brave who dared to listen. Story 18, the aged apartment exuded a sense of history within its walls. The heating system emitted low groans, the pipes occasionally rattled. It was all part of the building's character, or so she reassured herself. Yet on that fateful night, a hushed voice, barely audible yet unmistakable, drifted through the ducts. It wasn't the typical background noise of neighbors conversing. It was a whisper calling out her name. Intrigued and unnerved, she leaned in closer to the vent, her heart quickening with each passing second. A breath of icy air brushed against her cheek, followed by a soft, almost playful declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself rooted to the spot in the heart of the deserted apartment, her focus fixed on the rusty vent cover forcibly removed from the wall. Around her, the forensics team meticulously gathered evidence, their cameras capturing every detail. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace until a peculiar odor prompted the building manager to investigate. What they uncovered hidden within the ventilation system defied all logic. She mentioned hearing voices coming from the vents, Officer Patel relayed, scanning his notes. The building management dismissed her claims, attributing them to the building's aging infrastructure. Shaw knelt by the vent, observing the deep scratches encircling its edges. These marks weren't made by tools, she murmured to herself. The frantic gouges in the metal hinted at a desperate attempt to escape from within. Alina had been a beloved figure, a kindergarten teacher known for her nurturing demeanor and thriving houseplants adorning her windowsill. Her sudden disappearance had left her students crafting heartfelt cards, while her sister had initiated the missing persons report. She grew increasingly paranoid before vanishing. Her sister had confided during an interview, her voice tinged with sorrow. Alina was convinced someone was watching her, speaking to her through the vents in her apartment. "I assumed it was work stress." Surveying the apartment anew, Shaw noticed subtle details: a neatly made bed, an abandoned coffee mug in the sink, a chair strategically placed beneath the vent as if awaiting a listener. The forensic analysis unearthed unsettling findings. Fibers matching Alina's favorite cardigan snagged in the vent, a foreign fingerprint discovered on the inner side of the vent cover. Most chilling were the audio recordings retrieved from Alina's phone. Shaw sat alone in her car, rain drumming on the roof, as she listened to Alina's trembling voice followed by an eerie whisper beckoning her. The building's background check unveiled a dark past. Previous tenants had vacated hastily, citing strange noises and unsettling experiences. One had even suffered from hallucinations of voices emanating from the vents due to carbon monoxide poisoning. The building superintendent, Harold Weber, had overseen the property for 15 years. While his record appeared clean, Shaw couldn't ignore the fact that he held keys to every unit. During questioning, Weber maintained a facade of nonchalance, attributing the occurrences to mere building quirks. However, when pressed about the former occupants of apartment 4B, his demeanor shifted imperceptibly. A flicker of unease crossed his features, a tension gripping his frame. "I don't keep tabs on every resident," he evasively responded, his gaze distant. The investigation took a chilling turn with the discovery of a concealed access panel in Alina's bathroom, leading to a narrow maintenance passage running between the walls, granting access to the entire ventilation network. Inside, a cache of items was found indicative of someone living within the walls, observing, listening, whispering. Weber's residence appeared immaculate, devoid of personal touches, until a search of his computer unraveled a sinister truth. Organized folders containing recordings and images from various apartments, including a detailed account of his twisted fascination with Alina, unnerved the investigators. Incriminating evidence surfaced from a storage unit tied to Weber, revealing a macabre collection of mementos from past tenants, a shrine to his voyeuristic exploits. Caught attempting to flee under the shroud of night, Weber surrendered peacefully, his serene smile belying the horrors he had inflicted. "They all hear me eventually," he cryptically informed Shaw during interrogation. The coroner's report painted a grim picture of Alina's final moments lured into the ventilation system, drugged, disoriented, and left to perish in the labyrinthine ducts, following the seductive whispers promising sanctuary. Families of previous tenants stepped forward, sharing accounts of missing possessions and loved ones plagued by paranoia and distress. A pattern of predation spanning years emerged, with Weber preying on his victims from the shadows, manipulating their reality through whispered promises. At trial, his calm facade faltered as the evidence against him mounted. The jury wasted no time in delivering a unanimous guilty verdict, sealing Weber's fate. As he was escorted from the courtroom, a chilling proclamation escaped his lips. "They'll always hear me," he taunted Shaw, his gaze fixed on unseen specters. "The building retains my whispers," they echo on. The once inhabited apartment building now stands deserted, despite attempts at revitalization. Residents report eerie sounds seeping from the vents, phantom whispers in the walls, and chilling drafts carrying spectral voices. The aging infrastructure groans. The pipes continue to rattle, a haunting reminder of the sinister legacy that refuses to fade. Story 19. She never fancied venturing up there, but when the storm caused a leak in the roof, she had no choice. The attic loomed with forgotten treasures, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. Nestled in the deepest corner sat an ancient dollhouse, intricately detailed, its miniature furniture arranged with utmost care. Yet as she peered inside, a knot twisted in her stomach. The tiny figures within were not dolls, they were delicate, hand-carved replicas of her family. Each figure meticulously placed in exact alignment with their real-life counterparts downstairs, except for one unsettling detail. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic door. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the dollhouse roof, feeling the groove where the small wooden figure stood. A shiver ran down her spine, unrelated to the icy draft whispering through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place there. This wasn't her childhood abode, but a rented dwelling the family had recently moved into. The enigma began with Rebecca's frantic call to law enforcement. Officers arrived at the suburban abode to find a distressed family, clustered in the living room, unwilling to return upstairs. The lead investigator, Detective Sarah Harmon, initially brushed off their concerns as a probable prank or the vivid imagination of a family adapting to a new residence. The intricate details caught my attention, Detective Harmon later recounted in interviews. Each miniature figurine captured a unique trait of every family member: the father's receding hairline, the teenage son's hoodie, even the slight birthmark on the mother's hand. The course of the investigation altered when forensic teams uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. Even more disturbing were microscopic cameras hidden in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse itself. Scrutiny of the Morgan family's movements in the preceding days unveiled a disquieting pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse didn't merely mirror the family's seating arrangement. That evening they mirrored precise postures from various days, indicating someone had been observing them long enough to grasp their routines. We realized this wasn't just a simple case of stalking, elucidated Detective Harmon. The perpetrator exhibited a level of fixation seldom seen in criminal psychology. A concealed entrance to the basement, camouflaged behind a false wall in the pantry, was uncovered during the investigation. Inside, investigators stumbled upon a makeshift living area with signs that someone had been dwelling there even before the Morgans arrived. Discarded food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted that the intruder had been residing beneath the family for weeks. The absence of forced entry baffled investigators. Property records disclosed that the house had sat vacant for nearly a year before the Morgans took occupancy. The former owners, an elderly couple, had both passed away within months of each other. Their son had supervised the estate sale and subsequent rental of the property. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information. Most had noticed nothing amiss, though an elderly woman mentioned sporadically spotting lights in the house during its unoccupied period. I assumed it was the real estate folks showing the property, she informed investigators. It never crossed my mind that someone might be living there without permission. A breakthrough occurred through digital forensics. Examination of the surveillance system linked to the miniature cameras disclosed that data was being transmitted to an external server. The IP address guided investigators to a modest apartment across town. Inside, the walls were plastered with photographs of the Morgan family and former occupants of the house. Detailed journal entries chronicled the daily routines of each family member with alarming accuracy. The most chilling find was a workshop teeming with partially finished dollhouses, each representing distinct homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the previous homeowners. Financial records indicated mounting debt following his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house outright, he had fashioned a covert living space, continuing to dwell there while pocketing rent from unsuspecting tenants. The dollhouse served as his command center, expounded the forensic psychologist involved in the case. Each figure symbolized someone he monitored. Rebecca's figure by the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his way of acknowledging her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he elucidated his motives. They were living in my house, sleeping in my parents' bedroom. I needed to ensure they treated it with respect. When questioned about the positioned figures, he simply remarked, "I wanted them to be aware that I was always watching." Psychological evaluation unveiled a convoluted case of possessive delusion. Wells struggled to cope with the loss of his childhood home and devised an elaborate system to retain control over it. The dollhouse had become his conduit to possess both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never set foot in the house again. Rebecca later recalled that the most haunting moment wasn't stumbling upon the dollhouse, but comprehending its implications. Someone had been observing us all along, measuring our existence, turning us into mere pawns. The true terror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was realizing that in his mind, we were merely objects to be manipulated and observed. Wells faced multiple charges, including stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and breaking and entering. The case spurred a reevaluation of real estate disclosure laws concerning deaths on properties and the obligation of agents to ensure homes are properly vacated before new occupants move in. During sentencing, the judge highlighted the egregious violation the Morgan family had endured. You didn't just intrude upon their home, you invaded their sense of security and independence. You witnessed their most intimate moments and recreated them for your own amusement. What unsettles criminologists the most about this case is how long Wells could have continued unnoticed had Rebecca not discovered the dollhouse. Examination of his journals suggested he had clandestinely resided in homes for nearly 2 years, moving from one property to the next, crafting dollhouses of each family under observation. The Morgan family eventually relocated to a distant abode, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statements that she still checks closets and crawl spaces habitually. She purged their new residence of all dollhouses and miniatures. "Some days I can still feel eyes upon me," she admitted. "I wonder if somewhere, someone is still maneuvering a tiny version of me in a dollhouse I have yet to uncover." Story 20. It started with a pocket dial, just a jumble of static and muffled noises that usually would have been dismissed as a simple accident. But then a voice broke through the chaos. A woman's voice, urgent and frantic, whispered, "He's here. And then nothing but eerie silence. The phone number traced back to an empty house, a place long forgotten and abandoned by time. There were no signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the stillness of the place. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, covered in a thick layer of dust, sat a phone on the counter, its screen inexplicably glowing. The call had been placed only moments before. Detective Morgan Reed found herself pressing the playback button repeatedly, each time the whisper echoing in her mind, desperate, terrified, and utterly impossible. This abandoned property had once belonged to the Sullivan family, who had left after a devastating fire tore through the west wing of the house. No one had resided there since. The caretaker swore by his monthly visits, adamant that no one had set foot inside for years. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired to her partner, Detective Walsh. The answer came back registered to Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had tragically perished in a car accident 3 years prior. As Morgan gazed at the phone in the evidence bag, the pieces of the puzzle refused to fit together. A deceased woman's phone making calls from a place left to decay. The dust around the phone was disturbed only where it sat, as if it had appeared out of thin air. The forensic team's search yielded no answers. No fingerprints but vague smudges that refused identification. No footprints leading to or from the house. The doors remained locked, the windows sealed shut. The heart of their investigation became those 11 seconds of static, of breath, of 5 haunting words. Voice analysis confirmed with 98% certainty that it was Catherine's voice from old recordings. The timestamp revealed the call coincided with the exact moment of Catherine's tragic passing, down to the minute. Morgan and Walsh delved deep into Catherine's past, interviewing everyone who had known her. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely bewildered. Her mother, living a solitary existence in a small apartment, crumbled upon hearing the recording. "That's my Katie," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She sounds so scared." Catherine's boyfriend at the time of her death, Mark Jennings, had an airtight alibi for the night of the call. He had been working a night shift at the hospital, corroborated by numerous witnesses and security footage. Moreover, the house had stood deserted. The call should have been impossible, and yet it had happened. The investigation hit a standstill until a call from Catherine's mother changed everything. "I found something in her old belongings," she quivered. "Katie kept a journal, the last entry. You have to read it." In that journal lay meticulous entries detailing Catherine's relationship with Mark, the love that soured into control, isolation, and eventually fear. The final entry shook Morgan to her core. "He knows I'm leaving. He's enraged. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." Confronted once more, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of the journal's revelations. "You think I harmed Katie because of what she wrote. That's not proof," he spat. "I was the first one there after the accident. I was worried when she didn't show up. I went out looking for her." "But how did you know where to find her car off that remote road?" Morgan probed, his complexion drained of color. "I told you I was just worried." Returning to the scene of the accident, the investigators unearthed something buried 20 feet from the crash site, Catherine's actual phone. The device discovered in the house was a decoy, kept at her parents' residence. Examination of the buried phone unveiled deleted messages exchanged between Catherine and her sister on the night of her demise. "Mark knows I'm leaving. He's tailing me in his car. And later, he's running me off the road." A revaluation of the autopsy photos revealed discrepancies. The injuries on Catherine's body did not align solely with the crash. Defensive wounds, bruising indicative of strangulation. When the police arrived to apprehend Mark, he had vanished. His apartment harbored a shrine dedicated to Catherine's stolen mementos, photographs, and articles chronicling her death. Amidst his possessions lay software for audio manipulation and scripts detailing how he engineered the ghost call by splicing recordings of Catherine's voice. It was a sick game, a twisted ploy to confuse investigators and torment Catherine's grieving family. The scope of the investigation broadened to other incidents involving Mark, an emergency responder. 2 more suspicious deaths of young women surfaced, both ruled as accidents. Both had been entangled with Mark. 6 days into the manhunt, Mark was spotted at the Sullivan house. Inside, he sat at the kitchen table, fixated on a phone identical to Catherine's. He offered no resistance upon arrest. "She wouldn't be silent," he murmured to Morgan during interrogation. "Even after I silenced her, she kept accusing me, kept talking. I needed everyone to believe she lingered somewhere out there. A phantom can't testify against me." The jury swiftly rendered a verdict of guilty on the charge of first-degree murder. As the pronouncement echoed through the courtroom, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest. Justice had been served not through spectral means, but through the voice Catherine had left behind in her words, her fears etched in ink, her final plea for safety. The phone from the abandoned house now rests in the evidence vault. Some say they hear it ring, though its battery had been removed long ago. Catherine's tale endures not as a ghost story, but as a testament that victims will always find a way to be heard, even when their voices have been silenced. Story 21. The old Polaroid held secrets within its faded borders, capturing a birthday celebration frozen in time. Faces beamed with joy, candles danced with flickering flames, a scene of ordinary happiness. Yet hidden in the background, a mysterious figure lurked. A man, shrouded in shadow, stood just beyond the glow of the candles, his presence unnoticed by those in the foreground. With each passing photo, he drew closer, a silent intruder in the cherished memories. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the unsettling collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories revealed a trove of sun-bleached photographs from her childhood, marking moments of togetherness and celebration. What should have brought solace turned into the unraveling of a chilling mystery. In the initial photo, the figure was a mere whisper of darkness at the periphery of Sarah's 7th birthday party. By the following snapshots, he crept closer, a ghostly presence moving through the frames undetected by the revelers. Sarah, shaken to her core, reached out to her father, desperate for answers. "Dad, who is this man haunting our family pictures?" Her voice quivered with unease, prompting a sharp inhale from her father on the other end. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone there but us," he replied, his voice tinged with disbelief. Seeking clarity, Sarah sought the help of Detective Marcus Reed, who attentively examined the eerie progression of photos spread across his desk. Rain whispered against the window panes, casting somber shadows over the evidence as the detective's keen eyes traced the spectral figure's journey through time. No one could identify the enigmatic man, his presence a phantom anomaly in the captured memories. Each photograph revealed a calculated advance towards the unsuspecting children, with the final image depicting him looming just behind young Sarah, a spectral hand outstretched towards her. As the investigation delved deeper, uncovering connections to long-forgotten disappearances, a sinister truth began to emerge. The figure in the photos, previously obscured by shadows and time, bore a chilling resemblance to a missing maintenance worker, Robert Keller, suspected in a series of child abductions years ago. With newfound evidence and technological advancements, the once hidden details came to light. A scar, a ring, a reflection, all pieces of a macabre puzzle falling into place. Dental records confirmed the unthinkable, tying the spectral figure to a dark past of unsolved crimes. The search for answers led to a grim discovery beneath Keller's former residence: trinkets belonging to missing children, lost treasures buried in the depths of his depravity. Sarah, haunted by the revelations, found closure mingled with anguish as the truth of her childhood nightmares came to fruition. Alone in her quiet apartment, she pondered the weight of the uncovered horrors, the solemn faces in the photos bearing witness to untold tragedies. The detective's call brought grim confirmation of a child's remains found, bringing a bittersweet sense of resolution to grieving families. The final birthday photo, a snapshot of innocence tainted by hidden evil, held a silent vigil over the revelations. The figure, once a specter in the background, now stood exposed in the harsh light of justice, his legacy of darkness finally brought to account. As Sarah carefully returned the photos to their box, a sense of closure mingled with lingering unease. The unseen terrors that lurked within the frames served as a stark reminder that sometimes the most insidious threats are those that move through life unseen, leaving only a trace in the shadows of memory. Story 22. In the stillness of dawn, a mysterious package appeared on Sarah Miller's doorstep, shrouded in the cloak of anonymity. No return label, no tracking number, just a nondescript cardboard box kissed by the morning dew. It was a misfit not intended for her, as the name inscribed on it did not belong to anyone she knew. The rational choice would have been to disregard it, to leave it untouched where it lay. But curiosity, that insatiable mistress of the mind, beckoned her closer. With tentative fingers, she peeled back the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothes. Yet what lay within was far from ordinary: a lone VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing a simple command: watch alone. Sarah found herself holding the black plastic cassette, its weight unsettling, as if burdened by the weight of secrets untold. Tracing the worn edges with her fingertips, she felt the pulse of anticipation quicken within her. The note, scribbled with urgency, hinted at a tale waiting to be unraveled. Outside, the suburban neighborhood hummed with its daily rhythm: a distant dog's bark, the laughter of children, the drone of a lawnmower. Unaware of the enigma now residing within Sarah's home, life carried on as usual. Bringing the package inside, she placed it on her kitchen counter, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. The name Daniel Whitaker held no significance in her world. Having lived in the house for years, she had never encountered this mysterious figure in her mailbox before. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had long bid farewell, leaving behind no trace of a connection to this enigmatic package. Curiosity wrestled with unease as Sarah's gaze drifted to her VCR, a relic of days gone by. There was a pull, a magnetic force emanating from the tape, a whisper of mystery cloaked in the guise of worn plastic. Against the warnings of reason, Sarah inserted the tape into the machine. Static crackled on the screen, gradually sharpening into focus to reveal a dimly lit room bathed in the glow of a solitary lamp. The camera angle skewed, lending an air of urgency to the scene. A man sat in the shadows, his identity initially concealed. "My name is Daniel Whitaker." His voice, soft yet resolute, filled the room. "If you're watching this, they have found you, and that means they will find me as well." Leaning closer to the camera, Daniel's weary visage came into view, eyes haunted, stubble adorning his weary face, hair tousled in disarray. "I am innocent," he proclaimed, desperation lacing his words, "but they have fabricated evidence against me. They will say I knew her, that we quarreled, that I was present at the scene of her demise. It is all lies. I never laid eyes on Catherine Walsh until her image flashed across the news." The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted its position, revealing the stark emptiness of his surroundings, a barren room, devoid of comfort, a temporary refuge for a man on the run. "They framed me," his voice cracked, betraying the weight of his words. "The police report will bear falsehoods, painting me as a killer, but I am but a pawn in their twisted game." Detective Eliza Ramirez sat in her office, the VHS tape bearing Daniel's confession playing before her. It was one of many, each sent to a different recipient, each carrying the same plea for innocence from a man accused of a heinous crime. The case of Catherine Walsh, initially straightforward, took a darker turn with the emergence of these tapes. A young woman strangled in her own home, her life snuffed out in the shadows of deceit. The evidence pointed to Daniel Woodacre, a man who had vanished into the shadows on the day of her tragic demise. But the tapes whispered of a conspiracy, of truths buried beneath layers of deception. As Detective Ramirez delved deeper, she uncovered a web of lies woven by a powerful pharmaceutical company, PharmaCorp, and the whistleblower Catherine Walsh, who had dared to challenge their machinations. Walsh's death was not a random act of violence, but a calculated strike to silence her voice. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, revealing a sinister plot that reached the highest echelons of power. Sarah Miller received a second package, its contents a damning collection of documents proof of PharmaCorp's malfeasance, Catherine Walsh's crusade for justice, and the sinister forces at play. As the investigation unfolded, connections were made, alliances forged in the pursuit of truth. Daniel Woodacre's breadcrumb trail led to a storage unit, a repository of incriminating evidence that would unravel the carefully crafted facade of innocence. In a quiet moment of revelation, justice prevailed not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet certainty of truth revealed. Executives fell, the head of security confessed, and the wheels of justice turned inexorably towards redemption. Daniel Woodacre emerged from the shadows, a specter of the past, his innocence affirmed by the weight of evidence too compelling to ignore. Standing on Sarah's porch, he met her gaze, a silent understanding passing between them. "Why me?" she asked, her voice a whisper in the twilight. His eyes, weary yet resolute, held her gaze. "The algorithm chose you," he replied. "A stranger in the night, a bearer of truth in a world cloaked in shadows." And so the tale of Daniel Woodacre and Sarah Miller faded into memory, a testament to the fragile line between truth and fiction, justice and deception. The VHS tapes, once harbingers of mystery, now stood as relics of a bygone era, reminders that sometimes the most profound truths arrive in the guise of the unexpected, waiting for a curious soul to unveil their secrets in the stillness of the night. Story 23. In the quiet stillness of the night, the new homeowners felt a peculiar energy lingering within their Victorian manor. The intercom system crackled with age, a forgotten relic whispering secrets of the past. It was a quirk they dismissed until curiosity led the husband to press the button one fateful night. A mysterious voice crackled through the speaker, asking, "Why did you come back?" His heart raced as his hands trembled, and his wife's voice behind him denied ever speaking those words. The manor, shrouded by ancient oak trees, held a history unknown to its new inhabitants, Daniel and Meredith Parker. The couple had been drawn to the property by its vintage charm, despite the real estate agent's unease during the sale. The intercom system, a feature connecting every room, became an unexpected conduit to a chilling revelation. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but she sensed there was more to the story than met the eye. Daniel, with a haunted look in his eyes, recounted the strange occurrences involving the intercom system. His wife, Meredith, revealed a startling discovery hidden behind a wall, a journal belonging to a leaner, the previous owner, filled with cryptic entries hinting at a dark secret. As the investigation unfolded, the truth of Aliner's disappearance decades ago began to surface. The bones of a woman, bearing signs of a violent end, were unearthed beneath the garden shed. The evidence pointed to Vincent Blackwood, Aliner's husband, as the perpetrator of a heinous crime that had remained hidden for years. Vincent, now a frail old man residing in a care facility, confessed to his twisted deeds. He spoke of disconnecting the intercom to silence Aliner's constant presence, only for her voice to persist through the rewired system. His chilling admission revealed a web of lies spun to conceal his crime and deceive the world about Aliner's fate. The trial brought closure, but the house itself seemed to harbor echoes of the past. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the manor's history, bid farewell after a solemn memorial for Aliner. The intercom, a conduit for the dead to speak, was removed by the new owners, who heard faint whispers as they dismantled it, attributing the sounds to mere interference. Detective Reeves, closing the chapter on the Blackwood case, pondered the house's eerie ability to reveal its secrets across time. The justice served was a testament to Aliner's voice breaking through the veil of silence that had shrouded her fate for so long. The manor, now devoid of its dark past, stood as a silent witness to the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Driving past the property on her way home, Detective Reeves felt a sense of peace wash over her. She never stopped, but as she slowed down, a gentle breeze carried whispers of long-forgotten secrets, a reminder of the house that answered back, a tale woven into the fabric of time. Story 24. In the quiet of the night, a faint flicker disrupted the peaceful hum of the baby monitor, catching the mother's attention. Brushing it off as a mere glitch, she tried to ignore it until a crackling sound pierced the air, followed by a soft, eerie whisper urging, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine as her heart quickened its pace. Hastily she rushed to her son's room, panic rising within her, only to find the crib empty, the window closed, and the door securely locked. The only unsettling sight was the plush rabbit lying on the floor, its dark, unblinking eyes fixed on her. Rebecca's scream tore through the night, raw and piercing, echoing the terror that gripped her soul. The neighbors, disturbed by her cries, reached out for help, summoning emergency services to her aid. When the authorities arrived, they discovered Rebecca in the nursery, cradling the stuffed rabbit, her world shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of little Samuel, her 4-month-old son. Initial investigations yielded little, with no signs of forced entry and the security system undisturbed. The baby monitor footage offered only a glimpse of the mysterious voice and static that had unsettled Rebecca. How could someone enter a locked home, vanish with a child, and leave no trace but a displaced toy? Suspicion fell on Rebecca, her strained marriage and struggles with postpartum depression casting shadows of doubt. As the community whispered and pointed fingers, a breakthrough emerged. Microscopic fibers on the nursery windowsill hinted at an intruder's unconventional entry, leading the investigation down a new path. Security footage uncovered a dark figure moving stealthily, a footprint in the garden soil pointing to a skilled climber. Daniel, Rebecca's husband, returned to a storm of accusations, his hands bearing telltale calluses from rock climbing, a recent hobby supposedly for stress relief. Financial records and mysterious phone calls painted a troubling picture, unveiling a hidden life and questionable motives. The baby monitor, once a source of comfort, became a tool of deception. Hacked and manipulated, it revealed a sinister plot orchestrated from afar. Samuel was found alive in the care of a woman named Elaine, whose connection to Daniel unveiled a twisted history of loss and obsession. During the trial, the truth unfolded in chilling clarity. Enhanced audio exposed Daniel's involvement, his cough a damning echo of his presence at the scene of the crime. Sentenced for their crimes, Daniel and Elaine faced justice, while Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. As the case closed, a haunting truth lingered the baby monitor, a silent witness to the darkness that crept into their lives, its whispered secrets forever etched in memory. Samuel, unaware of the turmoil he had escaped, grew up shielded from the echoes of that fateful night. And Rebecca, holding onto the stuffed rabbit as a silent reminder, locked away the truth it bore, a testament to the unforeseen dangers that lurk in the depths of the night. Story 25. The worn wooden plank shifted under her weight, causing a subtle creak that drew her focus. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced her fingers along the edges, sensing a hidden void beneath the seemingly solid floor. With cautious determination, she lifted the boards, unveiling a shadowy, confined space lurking beneath her new abode. Dust and cobwebs greeted her at first, but as her vision adjusted to the dimness, shapes began to materialize. A mattress, a chair. And nestled in the corner, a weathered notebook filled with the repetition of a single name, her name. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman, observing the mix of fear and disbelief etched in her features as she peered into the darkness below. It wasn't just the discovery of a hidden chamber that unsettled Sarah. It was the violation of her sanctuary, the encroachment of something sinister into what was meant to be a fresh start. "Don't disturb anything." Detective Reed's voice was steady yet commanding as she clicked on her flashlight, shedding light on the secrets concealed beneath. The illuminated beam unveiled walls plastered with surveillance photos, snapshots of Sarah going about her daily life, unaware of being watched. It was a chilling shrine of obsession, meticulously kept right beneath her unsuspecting feet. Sarah had bought the quaint cottage from the estate of a reclusive man named Walter Green, who had passed away without any known kin. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah's purchase, with no mention of the hidden chamber in any disclosures or inspections. "I never met him, the previous owner." Sarah's voice was a whisper. "The neighbors said he was a recluse. I thought the basement access had been sealed off ages ago. That's what the inspection report indicated." Crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment thudding against the wooden floors as they delved into the hidden space. Every detail was meticulously documented, evidence catalogued, and the eerie contents of the chamber retrieved. Forensic analysis revealed a plethora of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green. What sent shivers down the investigators' spines was the timeline they uncovered. Walter had been observing Sarah for years before his demise, blending into her world without her ever noticing his presence. This level of fixation usually escalates, the department psychologist explained during a briefing. The subject transitions from fantasy to planning. The hidden room suggests he was preparing for something more direct. Detective Reed's investigation took a twist when she interviewed Walter's former coworker from the local shopping center maintenance department. The man appeared uneasy, playing with his wedding ring nervously. Walter mentioned her sometimes, he confessed. Said she reminded him of someone. "I thought it was just harmless talk. I never imagined." Reed's persistence paid off as she obtained a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, revealing a key that led them to a storage unit registered in his name. Inside, they found an eerie replica of Sarah's former apartment down to the smallest detail. A mannequin resembling Sarah sat at a desk, the calendar marked with a date ominously circled in red, "Together." Further digging uncovered Walter's troubled past, his institutionalization for erotomania, a delusional fixation on a teacher. Released and seemingly reformed, something about Sarah reignited his dangerous obsession. The case was officially closed after Walter's death, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, a fate Sarah narrowly escaped. Sarah chose to sell the house, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. During the final walkthrough, she reflected on the chilling possibilities lurking beneath her peaceful facade. What if I hadn't noticed that loose floorboard? How long would I have lived here, unaware of the danger beneath my feet? The cottage passed into new hands, ignorant of its dark past. The hidden chamber was sealed, the floorboards replaced, but for those privy to the truth, it remained a sobering reminder of the unseen perils that sometimes dwell among us. The silent predators who evade capture, the victims who narrowly avoid their grasp, the room beneath the floor, whispered a tale of shadows and secrets that lingered long after the darkness had been exposed. Story 26. The old house had sat abandoned, untouched by life for years, a silent witness to a mystery shrouded in whispers. The neighbors spoke of the young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty space that seemed to echo with her absence. But when the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a chilling discovery: the bedroom door sealed shut, as if guarding a secret long forgotten. With cautious determination, they forced open the door, breaking the heavy seal of neglect that had held it fast. The air within was thick with the weight of time, every surface cloaked in a blanket of dust that whispered of forgotten memories. Yet, amidst the stillness, a sense of unease lingered, a feeling that something unseen watched from the shadows. The room appeared frozen in time, a snapshot of a life abruptly halted. The bed was neatly made, untouched by the passage of years. The mirror gleamed, reflecting back a distorted image of the past. And on the desk, a solitary candle stood vigil, its flame long extinguished, leaving behind a pool of hardened wax like tears frozen in time. It was there, amidst the silent tableau, that they found a weathered notebook, its pages yellowed with age, yet bearing the mark of recent ink. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths hidden in shadows, pored over the pages while forensic experts combed the room for the faintest trace of a presence long gone. The notebook bore the name of Elise Winters, a name whispered in hushed tones by those who remembered her disappearance 5 long years ago. Her words, penned with a precision that belied the turmoil within, told a tale of fear and foreboding. In the final entry, etched with a desperate urgency, she spoke of unseen eyes watching, of a danger lurking just beyond the edge of sight. As the detective closed the book, sealing away the echoes of a life interrupted, a faint scent lingered in the air, a hint of something chemical, something unspoken. The landlord, a shadow in the doorway, murmured of checks made and doors left unsealed, his face a mask of disbelief at the secrets unearthed. Elise had been a paralegal, a seeker of justice in a world of shadows and deceit. Her colleagues spoke of her dedication, her meticulous nature, her descent into isolation in the days leading up to her disappearance. They whispered of files unearthed, of numbers that danced to a tune of deception, of a truth too dangerous to see the light of day. The room held no answers, no easy resolutions to the enigma of Elise's fate. No signs of struggle marred the pristine surfaces, no drops of blood stained the floor. It was as if time itself had conspired to preserve a moment suspended in eternity, waiting to be unfurled like a scroll of forgotten truths. But hidden beneath the facade of normalcy, a revelation awaited, a secret compartment, a buried truth waiting to be unearthed. Within its depths lay a key that opened a door to a world of shadows and deceit, a world where justice wore a mask of deception. The contents of the hidden compartment revealed a web of lies, a tapestry woven with threads of corruption and betrayal. Financial transactions danced across the pages, linking Elise to a truth too dark to bear. The recordings whispered of voices long silenced, of truths buried deep beneath layers of deceit. As Detective Morgan delved deeper into the labyrinth of shadows, a truth that shattered the facade of innocence, revealing a darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. The path led to a figure of power, a man whose hands bore the stain of blood long dried. Vincent Harriman, a name whispered in the halls of power, stood accused of a crime most heinous, a crime of passion, of greed, of a life taken in the name of silence. His denials rang hollow in the face of evidence stacked like bricks in a wall of justice. The courtroom hushed as Elise's mother spoke, her voice a whisper of grief and defiance. She spoke of a room untouched, a truth preserved in silence, a legacy of justice waiting to be unveiled. The shadows of the past gave way to the light of truth, illuminating a path long obscured by deceit. And so the house stood empty once more, a monument to a life lost and a truth revealed. The whispers of the past lingered in the air, a reminder of a young woman's final stand against the darkness that sought to consume her. In the stillness of the night, a light flickered in the upstairs window, a beacon of justice shining in the darkness, a testament to a life taken but never forgotten. Story 27. In the quiet embrace of the night, a mysterious tale unfolds. It arrived delicately in the realm of the ordinary, nestled within the folds of a plain envelope that bore no hint of its origins. A single brass key emerged, weathered by the passage of time, its secrets shrouded in enigma. The homeowner, her name lost to the whispers of the wind, gazed upon the key with a sense of eerie recognition that danced just beyond her grasp. With a curiosity as old as time itself, she ventured to slide the key into every lock she possessed, seeking a connection to its silent melody. Yet with each turn, each gentle click, the locks remained steadfast and unmoved. The key did not belong to her world, to her sanctuary of walls and shadows. And yet, as she placed it upon the polished surface of her coffee table, a relic of days long past stirred from its slumber. The old grandfather clock, its hands frozen in a dance of stillness, announced its presence with a solitary, haunting chime that echoed through the hushed corridors of the house. A melody of memories long forgotten, of secrets buried deep within the heart of time itself. Sarah Miller, a name whispered by the shadows, found herself entwined in a web of mystery that beckoned from the shadows. She ventured forth, her voice a trembling whisper in the night, and shared her tale with those who dwell in the realm of authority. The responding officer, a figure cloaked in the guise of skepticism, sought to dismiss her fears with a wave of his hand. A key in the mail, a simple mistake, a mere trifle of fate, he suggested. Yet Sarah, her gaze fixed upon the key that held the weight of the unknown, could not shake the tendrils of unease that coiled around her heart. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, a token of a world unseen that lay just beyond the veil of understanding. And so it came to be that Detective Robert Harmon, a stalwart guardian of truth in the shadows, found himself drawn into a tapestry of events that would unravel the very fabric of their tranquil suburban haven. The brass key, unassuming yet pregnant with untold stories, sat upon his desk like a silent sentinel, a harbinger of secrets waiting to be unveiled. Background checks whispered of Sarah's innocence, her past a canvas untouched by the brush of suspicion. A retired teacher of words long forgotten, a widow with ties that spanned the breadth of the country, she bore no mark of guilt upon her brow. The forensic dance of light and shadow revealed naught but Sarah's touch upon the key, her essence woven into its very being. The envelope, a vessel of silence, divulged no secret save for a postmark that spoke of distant lands and passing time. And the key itself, a mere trinket in the grand tapestry of fate, bore the mark of a schlage, worn by the caress of years gone by. Yet in the dance of shadows and light, a revelation emerged from the depths of obscurity. Detective Harmon, a seeker of truths buried deep within the earth, ventured to unlock the key's hidden song with a stroke of insight. A cold case whispered its name from the annals of time, its echoes haunting the corridors of memory. 7 years passed, a key of identical design had unlocked a realm of darkness, a storage unit that harbored secrets too sinister to name. Blood-stained carpets bore witness to unspeakable acts, cutting tools whispered of silent screams, and photographs of veiled women breathed a tale of horror into the night. The original investigation had faltered, its path obscured by shadows that refused to yield to the light of truth. Harmon delved into the dusty archives, his fingers tracing the echoes of a past long forgotten. The key, a silent witness to atrocities unspeakable, held the key to a labyrinth of darkness that awaited its reckoning. The detective who had once walked the path of shadows had vanished into the mists of time, leaving behind a trail of questions that beckoned to be answered. And so it was that the search for truth unfurled its wings, casting a pale light upon the figure of Harold Jenkins, a specter of darkness that prowled the edges of memory. His footsteps, silent as the whispers of the night, had once trod the same streets as Sarah Miller, a dance of shadows that intertwined their fates in ways unseen. As the veil of time parted, Jenkins emerged from the mists of obscurity, a substitute teacher whose presence lingered in the halls of memory, a phantom of the past that haunted the echoes of yesteryear. His past, a tapestry of unspoken truths and hidden lies, bore witness to a life lived in the shadows, a dance of deception that eluded the grasp of understanding. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of a man unseen, a figure of quiet resolve who wove tales of solitude and silence. The whispers of the wind carried his name on wings of shadow, a name that bore the weight of unspeakable deeds hidden beneath a mask of normalcy. Yet the question remained, a specter that haunted the corners of Sarah's mind. Why had the key found its way to her, a beacon of darkness in a sea of light? Harmon, his gaze fixed upon the tapestry of truth, ventured forth into the labyrinth of shadows that beckoned from the depths of memory. A fresh analysis whispered its secrets to the winds, revealing a tapestry of darkness that spanned the breadth of time itself. The DNA, a whisper of truth in a sea of lies, bore the mark of a distant connection, a second cousin twice removed from the specter of Harold Jenkins. And so it was that the dance of shadows and light revealed a truth long buried, a connection that wove its tendrils through the fabric of time, binding Sarah and Jenkins in a dance of fate that defied understanding. The search for truth unfurled its wings, casting a pale light upon the figure of Harold Jenkins, a specter of darkness that prowled the edges of memory. As the shadows deepened, a revelation emerged from the depths of obscurity. A cabin, nestled in the heart of forgotten woods, bore witness to the darkness that lurked within the heart of man. Beneath its weathered floorboards, a hidden chamber lay in wait, its secrets veiled from the eyes of the world. Meticulously organized shelves held the keys to a kingdom of shadows, each bearing a name and date that whispered of unspeakable deeds. 5 keys, echoes of a past best left forgotten, bore the weight of memories too heavy to bear. And 27 more, a testament to darkness that spanned the breadth of time itself, whispered of lives lost to the dance of shadows and light. Buried beneath the earth, a chorus of whispers rose from the depths, their voices a lament for lives cut short by the hand of darkness. The excavation, a dance of shadows and light, unfolded its tale with each passing moment, revealing the truth that lay buried beneath the veil of time. Sarah, a figure lost in the dance of shadows, found herself ensnared in a web of darkness that threatened to consume her very being. New locks adorned her sanctuary, a fortress of shadows that sought to ward off the specter of Harold Jenkins and the darkness that lurked within his heart. The question lingered, a specter that haunted the corners of Sarah's mind. Why had the key found its way to her, a beacon of darkness in a sea of light? Harmon, his gaze fixed upon the tapestry of truth, ventured forth into the labyrinth of shadows that beckoned from the depths of memory. A manhunt unfolded, its tendrils reaching far and wide in search of the specter who prowled the edges of memory. The press, a chorus of voices in the night, whispered of a figure known as the Keymaster, a name that sent shivers down the spine of all who heard it. The community, a tapestry of souls lost in the dance of shadows, trembled in the wake of revelations too dark to name. Fear, a specter that haunted the edges of understanding, gripped their hearts in a vice of icy dread as they grappled with the truth that lay hidden beneath the facade of normalcy. And so it was that the hunt unfolded, its footsteps echoing through the night as the shadows deepened and the truth unfurled its wings. A wildlife photographer, a figure lost in the dance of shadows and light, captured an image that spoke of darkness lurking in the heart of the woods. Authorities closed in on the figure of Jenkins, a phantom of the past who sought to elude their grasp. The final confrontation, a dance of shadows and light, unfolded with the grace of a waltz as the specter of Harold Jenkins met his fate in the heart of the night. Yet the truth remained, a specter that haunted the edges of understanding. A journal, its pages a tapestry of darkness, bore witness to the crimes of a man lost in the dance of shadows. Sarah's name, a whisper in the night, graced its final pages with a message that sent shivers down the spine of all who read it. And so it was that the truth emerged from the depths of darkness, revealing a tale of horror that spanned the breadth of time itself. Lives lost, a chorus of whispers that rose from the depths, bore witness to the darkness that lurked within the heart of man. The keys, a silent testament to lives cut short, whispered their secrets to the winds as they lay in silent repose. Each key, a relic of darkness, unlocked a truth too terrible to name, a truth that spoke of the darkness that hides behind the veil of normalcy.